What's up, everybody? Welcome to the space. Chairman Hodge should be on fairly soon. I'm just editing some material from the convention myself. I'm going to make Rev a co-host here. How's everybody doing? Hopefully good. Hopefully real good. I'm just getting us speeches from the convention. Getting them edited finally. I have a bunch of them edited. We just had to do the oh my goodness. Just started playing one of the convention speeches by accident. I just heard people chanting ACP in the background, which I guess is a good way to start this space. Let me text the great Khan, the chairman, and see when we're gonna get started here. ACP, ACP, ACP. It looks like Haas is gonna be streaming this, which is based. So we're probably waiting for him to get his kick set up and whatnot. Sorry, I should probably stop editing. See how it's texting me back. All right, Haas will be here in about 5. So just waiting for Rev to be co-host. I already sent the invite, but I guess not. Make him co-host so we can moderate things, and we'll start bringing people up. I'm excited to see who actually shows up to the Royal Rumble today. There's a handful of people who seem to hop on every single Twitter cancel campaign, whether it's against us or other people. Like if there's some online drama, they're involved. So I'll be very interesting if those kind of people don't show up. And then of course there's the people who are under every single tweet we put out saying something stupid, saying a bunch of buzzwords, placing random labels on the ACP that don't even make sense. At least that's how I see it. So, like, from my perspective, if you have the time to respond to everything that an ACP member puts out on X, you should have the time to show up and actually talk to us as well. And I think that if you're going to make the accusation that somebody's a fascist, that somebody's a red brown, that somebody's a Browderider, an imperialist, especially a group like us that, vouches or claims to be staunchly anti-imperialist, if you're going to make those accusations about us, you should be able to back them up. You should be able to explain or give ample evidence as to why somebody's a fascist, why somebody is not what they say that they are. And Haas and I feel that while these people have an abundance of accusations and labels to put on us, they have very little in terms of actual evidence as to why we're not communists, as to why we're imperialists or fascists or whatever they may say. So I think this stream is the perfect antidote, or this space is the perfect antidote. Bring people on, hear them out, combat their arguments or respond to their arguments, and then let the people decide for themselves. Let the masses decide for themselves, which they already are in many ways. It's not as easy to pile on the ACP as it once was. The people who side with us are growing in numbers every day, but yeah, it'll be fun to see that play out in a space. Looks like we got a lot of people filing in already. And what I really hope, more so than seeing a lot of wreckers, because I know, or at least I guess I don't know, I hope there will at least be a handful of people who want to come on and argue with us or call us fascists or whatever. But I also hope there's some people who don't know, because this is the thing about these wreckers. They seem irrelevant and they seem ridiculous to us when we know that the shit that they're saying is completely false. But people believe it, right? Because some of these like tweets saying that we're feds or whatever end up getting a lot of likes and views and interactions, whether they're fed boosted or not, is a debate. But there are people who would be, potential ACP members or who are on the fence about ACP who see these things and believe them. And I've had very rational people, good people, be like, yeah, isn't ACP fascist though, or whatever? Aren't you guys JQ or whatever the hell they're saying about us that week? So I hope some of those people are watching, and they get to see the truth. They get to see these people who call us fascists actually try to back up their arguments, and hopefully it gets people to stop sitting on the fence. The fence sitters, we're just waiting for Haas, by the way. He'll be here soon, but the fence sitters bug me too, like, and I get it, not to scare away anybody who's sitting on the fence, but there's people who are like, yeah, I love what you guys are doing. I love the community outreach. I love the party program, but I don't agree with some of the things that have been tweeted over the last 3 years by every member of the infrared community. Some of the tweets are cringe. And like, man, in any collective, you're going to have people who you don't like, and you're going to have things said that you disagree with. Are you really going to miss the chance to join the first real Marxist-Leninist, communist, working class-based party that we've had in years or decades? Because you disagree with some tweets? Like, you're always going to disagree with some tweets. If you're sitting around waiting for the perfect organization to come around, not just perfect in terms of ideology, but an organization, where all of the members only ever post things on social media that you agree with or that you think are not cringe, like, you're going to be waiting forever. That's just pure purity fetishism, right? You have to pick what you think is the most effective vehicle of class struggle in your own country. And right now, I think it's fairly obvious that that's the ACP. I mean, that's why the infrared guys and the Midwestern Marx guys weren't able to join a party before the ACP was founded, because there wasn't, a viable option. But now there is. Rev, you got okay, yeah, you did. Good.
Yeah, hey Eddie, I see a lot of our haters, but they're being bitches and they're not coming up.
What?
Yeah, there's a lot of haters. They're not coming up though.
Raise your hands, boys. I'll talk to them. As we wait for Haas, raise your hand if you want to make some accusations or whatever. I don't know. Tell us why we're red browns. That would be the move that they would make. Just lurk. Is Haas setting up kick? He must
Yeah, I
be.
think so.
Okay. I didn't
Eddie,
know
you
he
know
was
what I
gonna.
noticed is that a lot of our haters, they actually agree with us. It's just their leftist bubble will cancel them. You notice
Right.
that?
100%. That's how I feel about Hakeem and Ugopnik and them. Um, I feel like they would, like, they agree with us on a lot of things politically, but their audience would just jump down their throats if they worked with us. It's a lot of it's just like social relationships. Um, it all has to do with the friend groups that people are in and what they're gonna think if they support the ACP. It's weird. Nobody's raising their hand to join. That's crazy. Now's your chance to get, like, just attack me. The mean one isn't even here. The bad cop isn't even here. She's the good cop. The good con. Okay, do we got Nathan, are you one of the people who wants to join? Skeptical. Okay, we'll add Nathan as a speaker. All right, Nathan, you're up.
How's it going, gentlemen?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Sorry, I'm not the like all-time hater I think you're envisioning right now. I don't have any like, I don't know. I don't really hate you guys. I don't think you're like full-blown like fascist. But I just wanted to bring up some points that maybe you could address even because like I think I would say that I'm like a little on the fence.
Yeah. No
Yeah.
worries. It's not all haters. We'll talk to anyone with
Yeah, and first of all, I just want to say I'm actually a pretty big fan of yours, Eddie. I've been watching your TikToks now for like a couple of years, so
Thank
you
you.
really got me
Appreciate it.
into a lot of like Marxism, which I'm really grateful for.
Good.
But
Good.
one thing I wanted to bring up is specifically the ACP's relationship with Canada, because to me it seems a little undeveloped. Like I've read your constitution and everything, and it like specifically states that like you believe that like the United States and Canada should like form like some sort of like union, but
Mm-hmm.
to me it does. I don't specifically understand the rationale, and it's not really clearly stated.
Yeah, the rationale for that, and Haas would be able to explain this one better than me. But the main thing is that Canada never had their revolution of independence. They never had a revolution where they established national sovereignty. They've basically been um, a tool of the British Crown. And if hypothetically, if there was to be a revolution in the U.S., Canada would for sure be used as the main launching point for regime change by the other capitalist powers. Now, from a working stand, this was an idea that I didn't fully understand either when it was presented. But from as we begun our party work and begun working on the ground, it started to make way more sense to me because Canada's in a similar position to us where their left has been very heavily infiltrated and pushed towards away from class politics, by intelligence agencies and whoever else.
Yeah.
Um, so they're in a situation where they don't have, or the Marxist-Leninists that we're working with in Canada or who are part of the ACP, they don't have a real Marxist-Leninist Communist Party either. So
Yeah.
as Americans, it doesn't make sense to leave behind Canada, which is basically just some mining companies wearing a maple leaf as a flag or as a cape. So and when we're actually engaging in on the ground work, it wouldn't make sense to leave our Canadian comrades behind because they're incredibly close to us geographically, culturally. They're extremely similar to us, and there's a lot of collaboration that can go on between the chapters in Canada and the chapters in the U.S. So it makes sense not from an communist organizing perspective right now to unite with them, and it makes sense to unite civilizationally in the
Yeah.
long
So
run.
could I
Complete.
ask, like, do you think that the national question is the same? Like, do you think that like the United States and Canada form one nation?
Yeah, I think it should be left to the people to determine, but I mean, our Canadian members have been, enthusiastically on board with that. They recognize that similar to America, they don't even have national sovereignty, which, Stalin and Lenin made it clear that national sovereignty is the basis for any socialist project. So, as I said, Canada's never established their national sovereignty.
Sorry, in what sense? Could you elaborate?
As in, we had the American Revolution where we tossed out the British and established ourselves as a
Yeah.
unique country, whereas Canada didn't.
Right.
So they need that to establish national sovereignty, and a divided U.S. and Canada makes things easier for the imperialist capitalist powers that we know, and the counter-revolutionary forces that we know will try to destroy any kind of working class uprising in the U.S. or Canada.
Right. So you do think it's ideal to like form a union,
Yeah,
or do you
definitely.
think like annexation?
I mean, I wouldn't say annexation because we need to respect sovereignty, but I definitely think it's should push for the political project of forming a union. Yes, and then there becomes the extra question of Quebec, which is, resulting in a lot of internal discussions within the ACP and
Yeah.
discussions with other parties, because in the past there's been a pretty strong movement for Quebec sovereignty, as
Yeah.
opposed to the rest of Canada. So I don't know if we've even come to a hard decision on how to treat that as a party yet, but those are the kind of internal discussions that are going on around this issue.
Yeah, so thanks for that. I would say though, I wouldn't necessarily say that Canada and the United States form one nation. The way that Canada is kind of formed right now, it's kind of just a state of nations. And like you
Right.
brought up Quebec, for example, and from my understanding, there are like very active like members in Quebec in the ACP,
Yes,
which
very much so. They're
which
some
is
of our
cool.
best.
But I wouldn't say that Quebec specifically is I guess, unique in the sense of its distinctiveness, because I think there are many nations across Canada that form their own like sovereignty
I
movements.
would.
Like I come from. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. You can finish.
So like I like for example, like I'm from Newfoundland in Canada. It's pretty like smaller province, for example, but I would say that we have the same sort of like nationalist, separatist sentiment that Quebec does, and I think a lot of Indigenous nations across the country in Canada also form this kind of specific nation within like the broader state of
And I would
Canada.
say the same for the U.S. The U.S.
Yeah.
has a lot of
Oh,
different
absolutely.
nations across it, but here, this introduces the importance of another concept of the civilizational state, which is essentially what China is. There are many nations across China, but they form one united civilizational state, which makes them stronger. China's greatest strength is that they have 1.4 billion people. And Haas has made this argument very well, that balkanization in many ways made the European countries weaker and made it easier for the U.S. to basically turn them into neo-colonies. So we want to push this idea that we can have a united civilizational state. We can all exist under one state, even though there are different nationalities, and we don't need to balkanize the country, slice the country up. In fact, we should unify, with Canada,
Yeah.
is what I'm arguing. But you don't. But you can have multiple nationalities existing under one state, and China's the perfect example. They give, the Uyghurs have special cultural protections in Xinjiang. It's the, known as the Uyghur Autonomous Zone, where they're allowed to have their own forms of self-governance, and their cultural and religious practices are protected. That's the kind of uh, protection of nationalities or so-called minority groups that we envision seeing in a united socialist America in the future.
Okay, cool. So you think, like for example, like the United States and Canada, they should kind of restructure on like on specific nations across the states.
Yeah, it's like a sublation, because, like you said, like America is a union, but
Yeah.
the way Haas sees it is like the project is still super incomplete. It's still a bunch of divided cultures, and divided nationalities. So this would be almost a sublation and a reassertion of real sovereignty, because really there's no sovereignty for either America or Canada at this point. Everything is
Yeah.
completely run by shareholders and big banks. So this would be, a sublation of national sovereignty, but really the first time that either country asserted their national sovereignty. And yes, this would involve like a restructuring of how the states exist and how even the borders may exist.
Yeah. Okay. Oh well, thanks for that. I recommend though to maybe like make that a little more clear, like in the Constitution, because all it says is just like a union. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. So
because
yeah.
it's a little open ended. Like
Yeah.
through practice, we're gonna be, and through discussion, we'll answer more of these questions. But yeah, it's a good point, because it's a question a lot of people have.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty much all I had. I'm sorry I wasn't the prime hater you were looking for, but
No, that's all right. I prefer the intelligent conversation. But thanks for coming on.
yeah, no problem. Take care.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a good way to start. I'm sure it'll only get worse from there. But thanks to Nathan. It's a good question. A lot of people ask the Canada question. It's confusing. some people are hesitant at first, but I found that usually when you explain it, it makes sense. And like once you get on the ground organizing, like you see how much sense it makes, because it just wouldn't make sense for us to leave Canada behind. There are all these dedicated people who want to join the ACP specifically within Canada, because, like I said, they don't believe the left wing or communist parties in Canada are doing a good job, and they like the theoretical foundation and the work of the ACP. So to leave these people behind and be like, no, you're Canadian, you can't join the ACP, when, as we said, Canada basically has no sovereignty of their own. They're a tool of the crown, in many ways, or a colony of the crown in many ways. It doesn't make sense. And also, you should look at a map of Canada. This is the other thing I should have said. If you look at a map of Canada and where the people are at, they're almost all on the border with the United States. That's where almost everybody in Canada lives. Northern Canada is just like hunting and fishing land and cabins. So it really is, and culturally, it's the same. It's about the same, if you know what I mean. That was a bad joke. But yeah, hopefully that one makes sense. Like I said, if you get involved with organizing, you'll see how much sense it makes, I feel like. But all right, raise your hand. Who's next here? We got L. Where's the chairman? Oh, captain, my captain. Uh-oh. My phone is glitching, everyone. I'm about to like an inappropriate tweet. 1 second. My phone is having a glitch attack as usual. All right, we'll let L in here. We'll just go one by one. Oh, Haas is here. All right, 1 sec.
Yeah, hello. I'm from Quebec. I agree with what you said.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
In 2018, I presented myself for the Cannabis Party in Quebec.
Oh,
It
nice.
wasn't like straight communism, but like I used the party to try to get a seat. But like I didn't get voted in. So yeah.
All right, what? Eddie's guy, and I'm
yeah,
the.
I agree with you guys. We
All right, get
like
ready.
an alliance would be
Fucking guy.
good.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, I'm the asshole and Eddie's the nice guy. Here's what we're not going to do today. All right. Can you guys hear me? All right.
Yeah, you're good.
So we're not here to bring up people who are like, I kind of like you guys. And yeah, we're not. That's not what this is for. What this is for are all the people who said, "Oh, I missed out on the thing you were bringing people up to debate them. Why didn't you?" Well, we gave you a day's notice now.
Uh-oh. We lost him. I think it's bugging out again. Whoops. All right, this is why we needed Haas here to set the tone. This is not my thing. All right, he's back.
All right, this is massively glitching. I don't know on who. It's like delayed or something. Can you hear me right now? Is it all good?
Yeah.
All right. We don't want people who like us to come up and speak. We want people who are crying every single day about ACP to come up and genuinely just confront us with the things that you're saying. And it should be that simple. I mean, if what you're saying is so damning, then upon confronting us with whatever nonsense you're saying about us, we should not be able to respond. We should have no ability to, correct you, or we should have nothing. You're going to own us just like Charlie Kirk was owned by that extremely cool woman who owned him about fetuses or whatever. That's what you're going to look like in front of everyone. So please come up and confront us. Why is everyone scared? Why? I know I'm late. I'm like 15 minutes late. Eddie, nobody's requested.
I think this rhetorically defective guy is one of our haters. I'm gonna let him on next. He's the only one.
Bring him up. I don't know what's going on. I'm genuinely.
I don't think he's a leftist though. I think he's like a rightist.
Oh.
But...
We'll bring him on anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
What's up, rhetorically defective? Educate us.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I just wanna ask a few questions.
Okay.
So like, are you guys like a totalitarian organization that aims to not have any other political parties?
Paz is the king.
Yeah, we're totalitarian, and we want to put everyone in jail who tries to challenge the power of the proletarian dictatorship right away without trial.
Right. So, do you understand how that like seems concerning at all? Do you understand how someone like, might have like a hesitancy toward that approach? How it seems like, well, that's why I said totalitarian, because people call you fascist, but that's a right-wing thing. So I guess left-wing authoritarianism or fascism would kind of be what you're doing.
No trolling, no trolling. Here's the issue, all right? I'm sick of this idea that politics is a picnic where we're all getting together and holding hands and being friends with each other. Frankly, the existence of states is a cancer upon humanity in some kind of way. States are a cancer. They are a burden. They are a bad thing in a sense, because the real joys of life, the real pleasantness of life that people are looking for falsely in states, where they're with their families and where they're together and they're with their communities, that is actually that's the nice part of life. The state is an unfortunate fact of life. Why? Because the state is a violent power. It's a violent structure. It only exists for the purposes of being an organ of class warfare and class dictatorship. That's the basis of states. So, naturally, we are just being honest about what the nature of the state is. Now, in the current state that calls itself a democracy and pretends that it's a picnic, look around. Do you see a picnic? Because I don't. What I see is a dictatorship that is just disguising itself for stupid people. But anytime there's a serious challenge to it in any kind of way to this dictatorship, we see political assassinations. As a matter of fact, there have been already a few assassination attempts on the front runner right now, who's Donald Trump, right? We've seen a lot of cases of rigging, like they rigged it in 2020. I'm so glad I'm allowed to say that because, well, I don't know that for certainty, but, you know, come on. And there's a lot of questions I have. And then, you know, they'll smear, they'll suppress, they'll harass, they'll utilize any and all means to defend the current dictatorship. And then for stupid people who aren't that educated, it all appears as a democracy. But that's just because they're too passive and they don't know the extent of what it takes to actually challenge the state and the ruling powers that be. They think that means participating in the red versus blue politics. But wait, it gets better, because even if you do participate in the normal red versus blue politics, it's still treated as now a form of dictatorial suppression from one side or the other, whether it's big tech colluding with one party or the other to enforce their will and suppress the other, or whether it's you know, the increasing weaponization of the federal agencies against the MAGA movement or against who. I mean, it could be the reverse. That's just as plausible. Who cares, right? The fact of the matter is that politics is not a picnic. It's war. Politics is war. War is ugly. I agree. It's concerning. Just like you said, it's concerning. Well, that's the nature of war. And we have to ask ourselves the question, if there wasn't a state of war, we wouldn't need a state. But war is the fact of our current existence. And to be more specific about what kind of war I'm talking about, it's a class war. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so you essentially want to be a collection of dictators over society, is what it sounds like.
You can call it that, but we want to have
What do you call it?
Proletarian dictatorship. The workers have the workers.
What I'd call it,
right?
But
you're in charge. You're the chairman. You're the executive chairman. So let's not like be cute about it. Like you have a hierarchy over the proletarians in this dictatorship, correct?
If ACP conquered the state, then, and I was leading the ACP during that conquest, yeah, I deserve to be fucking dictator. Why not?
Right.
But I don't think that's going to happen, to be honest. But
I know, but that's your underlying desire.
Not really. I mean, I'm not even dictator of ACP, by the way, so probably not. I mean, I'm not even dictator of the fucking party. I'm sorry, excuse my French. I'm not gonna swear. I'm not even dictator of the ACP as chairman. So it would be the party that's dictator, and we would have earned it because we conquered the state. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I hope it happens in like years, though.
Well, the party isn't it's not a, so it's a dictator, but there's still a group of people like with a leader.
You can't take power.
Like with Mao, like with.
Yeah, but how am I, for example, how am I a dictator? I can't even make a single decision without getting the input of the rest of the executive board. And the executive board can't make major decisions without consulting the Politburo. And when the executive board and the Politburo have to make an extremely decisive choice, that could possibly be contentious, we have to consult with our chapter executives. So it's not really what you're, it's funny.
But how much still, I'm sorry, I won't interrupt too much, but just real quick. So, but like, would you say there was a unanimous decision with your ratifying your constitution? It seems like you're building something that influences and really encourages just unanimous and not a lot of disagreement.
Brother, I don't know what to tell you. The first vote was completely unanimous for the Constitution, and then when I read the program and I vote and we said nays, I literally said, "Don't be scared." Before I said, "Let's count the nays," I said, "Don't be scared."
Well, you can say "Don't be scared." It doesn't mean people aren't scared. Like, you're a pretty commanding person. Like,
what are they?
I don't hear Eddie speak up to you very often. For example, like, you seem to be like the dictatorial force.
So if our program wasn't gaining the support of the working class, we wouldn't have had anyone in that room. We wouldn't have all of the.
Well, you're getting support. It's not all or nothing.
It's not me and Kaz telling these people what to do and controlling them like drones. These are people who follow us because they like the program that we're offering, and this is the nature of proletarian dictatorship and class power. Is you can't have a revolutionary movement and establish a new revolutionary government unless you have mass support from the people. It's this idea. It's a very Western liberal idea that the people are just sheep who are followed around.
I am a Western liberal, so that's fair enough.
It's not realistic, as Haas said.
Hold on, I want to
decisions like that within our own party.
Wait, so you think people were scared that I was going to come down from stage and slap them across the face?
I didn't say that. No.
What were they scared of then? Why wouldn't they say nay? What were they? What do they have to fear? I mean, I'm not in power, so I can't drag them into the gulag.
Well, you want to be. I know, but you want to be in power. You have the energy about you. It's like with the other space that you guys did, where like you talk for like 90% of the time, and then like you'll interrupt people, no problem, but then you act indignant when someone interrupts you. You have this kind of energy about you.
Not, I mean, my that's just being Middle Eastern, to be honest. It's not a particular dictatorial pathology, but I wanted to ask you, what do you think people are scared of when they gave the unanimous vote?
Oh, I don't know in particular what they're necessarily scared of, but I mean, a lot of times.
All right, hold that thought. We have
okay. Yeah.
Someone with Hebrew.
I can chill. I'm going to talk to somebody else.
They have Hebrew characters in their name. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it says. Let's bring them up. Shalom.
Hello.
Shalom. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
What's going on?
Nothing.
You don't know? You just click request for no reason?
All right, they're getting the boot.
Yeah, I mean, what is this, what is this what is this fucking nonsense where you're requesting and you don't know what you're doing up here?
How about Lamar? Lamar keeps raising.
Bring him up. Bring him up.
Let's go, Lamar.
Bring him up.
Welcome. Connecting. He's been raising his hand for a while. I hope you have something to say.
By the way, the Hebrew guy is still, well, he's not the Hebrew. The guy with the characters, he's still requesting to be brought up. The audacity is incredible. Anyway, what is going on, Lamar? And he's gone.
Whoa. Average ACP record.
This is just profound. I mean, this is just profound. I mean, I don't know what's going on.
All right, Shige, you're next. We're just going rapid fire. Shige. Hello. Please give us a critique of the ACP. Please.
Go
Tell us
ahead.
why you hate us.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, are you guys planning on registering with FARA?
No, we don't need to.
You're not foreign agents.
No, why would you think we are?
I just scrolling through Jackson Henkel's Twitter feed. I think one gets that impression.
How so?
I stand with Iran. I stand with North Korea. I stand with.
Yeah, and they don't pay us anything. Isn't that fucked up? We're doing it for free, but that's okay. We'll still do it.
I know.
Putin bucks,
you really
please.
should. You could probably get some, but I don't think you need just.
Well, that would
We can't because we'll go to
Well,
jail.
Go to jail.
We're not stupid. We'll go to jail, but I mean, we do support them.
Yeah, but isn't it, you support them almost more so than you would support the Americans, it seems. The American people.
The American government, yeah, fuck the American government.
Yeah,
All
but
they
it
do
seems
is
you-
taxes, and that's
okay,
it.
yeah. I know. But it seems like you support the.
Can you name
foreign
$1 of my taxes that North Korea has ever taken?
$1 of your.
Name $1 North Koreans have ever taken.
$1. Your 32nd dollar. That's not my point. My point
Russia,
is that.
and Iran have never taken a dime from me, ever.
I mean, you're not a citizen of those countries, so how would they even do that? Unless you are.
They wouldn't. That's why. But the U.S. government takes I make nothing, and the U.S. government takes half of everything I make, and then uses it to give to Israel to kill children. So fuck them.
No, that is bad. That is bad. But it seems like, despite calling yourself the American Communist Party, you were much more interested in foreign policy than with domestic policy.
Yeah, we admire governments that actually have balls and are real governments that represent their people, and we're very jealous of them. But at the end of the day, yeah, we're Americans. I mean, here we are.
We don't want our taxes going to destroy them. We want those reinvested in Americans because foreign policy and domestic policy are inextricably intertwined.
Well, not really, right? But
no, yes, really. All of our taxes are going to Ukraine. That's money that could be spent on health.
Every single one of your taxes, every single dime is going to Ukraine.
No, but the massive amount of America's public spending is going towards bombing children in Gaza or the proxy war in Ukraine. And all of that could be reinvested in tons of other social programs and things that benefit the American people. It's like Eisenhower said, every nickel that's spent on a bomb is money that is not going towards, the American people themselves.
So you say that's your primary concern is with redirecting foreign policy or money that would go to foreign governments?
Basically, I'll tell you straight. All right, I'll tell it to you straight.
Go ahead.
We want the global system to be completely smashed and completely blown up. And all those foreign governments are the ones that are facilitating that process. And once that happens, our land will be free and ripe for the taking by communists.
So your goal is to facilitate the invasion of America by foreign governments. That's your primary goal.
No, not at all.
My misunderstanding.
You are, because I'm saying it's a global system that rapes America and Americans, and it occupies this land, And it is maintained primarily on the basis of enslaving the world and stealing the resources and wealth from the entire planet. And if that system was smashed, it would give Americans the opportunity to take their country back and have it be a country for Americans and not for this parasitic global Atlantic system.
Yeah, can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, jump in, brother.
Hey man, how you doing? It's good to talk to you, Haz. Got a lot of respect for you guys, Rev and Haz, and see a few other guys in here. No, I mean you guys. I like the truth, man. I mean, like I agree with like 90%. I mean, it's like that with most people on X. You know, it's like we agree on the main.
Appreciate it so much, brother. We love people who support us, and we really appreciate it. I think you disconnected there, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Should we bring someone else in?
Yeah.
Okay. Goodbye, Sheeg. Bring this person. The story giver. You are now speaker. Offer your criticism. You have to unmute yourself. You can do it. I see you raising your hand. I already gave you speaker. You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to add, it's not that our taxes are only used to throw bombs and kill babies. We have 750 military bases around the world.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
pay
So
to be in.
basically, yeah, but you
Sorry.
agree with us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. We love people we appreciate your support. Kick.com/infrared. I'm live right now.
YouTube.com/Midwestern.
Join the chat if you want, but this is for people who hate us.
Yeah.
Anyway,
another one.
Not to be rude, but politics is a brutal business.
Okay, this guy says he's a Twitch streamer, so that gives me some hope. All right, you're up, my friend. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. What is your plan to take over the state?
Just wait for it to collapse, literally.
Has that ever happened here in
Yeah.
America? In America's happened? When?
Oh, I didn't catch you when you said in America. I mean, no, not yet.
Okay, so just wait until hundreds of years.
Probably like 15 years.
Yeah, it's in the process of
Do you
collapse
think it's going to collapse in 15 years? You know that we have had way more close to state collapse in our history.
Like when? The
1930s?
Civil War?
Civil War, yeah.
Right, and look what happened. The Southern plantation oligarchy was crushed and replaced with a new
by the powerful state, yeah.
The Civil War, that wasn't a collapse. That was a civil war between two conventional state formations. But you're saying the 1930s, I don't know about that, actually. I think in the 1930s, you had FDR put together a pretty solid, like it or hate it, it was solid political coalition, which,
okay.
weathered the storm.
I'm a big supporter of FDR, dude. You don't think we should do the strategy? You know how the New Deal Democrats came to power?
Yeah, they came into power because they were scared shitless by the USSR, which was holding a nuclear gun.
The New Deal Democrats propped up from New York, from the labor movement in the 1910s, which ultimately led to FDR taking the presidency. That fucking argument that tankies like to use, that they were scared of they were afraid of the Soviet Union. It doesn't hold water.
They were.
They absolutely were.
Yeah, just because there were.
Wait. Right after FDR, you do know that reactionary forces took back power, right? Literally.
The reactionary forces maintained a reactionary foreign policy, but domestically they expanded the social welfare system significantly.
Okay. Wait. What do you? you know that FDR's foreign policy was actually pretty fucking solid, right?
Compared to the people who came after, sure, but in terms of domestic policy, after FDR died, because of the pressure exerted by the Soviet Union, the U.S. maintained a pretty strong and robust, social welfare system.
A lot of the main ones were introduced in 1965 under Lyndon B. Johnson, I believe.
Lyndon Johnson was the last New Deal president. Yeah, no, I agree. No. But my point to you, so my point to you is that the New Deal Democrats overtook the Democratic Party. You guys are just waiting for the state to fall off, and then what's
we're not
plan?
Just waiting, we're organizing a mass movement for the inevitable collapse of the state.
There's been mass movements in America. Black Lives Matter, fucking some of the labor movements.
Can you please not? I'm trying to be patient, but sir, you need to sit in your seat, take 5 deep breaths right now for this conversation to continue. The extent of you're in a rush to do, I don't know, it's overwhelming me. 5 deep breaths. I'm not even kidding. Let's go. 1.
Oh wait.
No. You're gonna do the deep breaths with us
with
for this to continue.
Come on.
1, 2, 3,
4. No, 5. You got it.
5. Let's go. This one should be long. Take your time, please.
Hold it.
I'm waiting.
Now that we're calm, basically the difference now is that we're a dysfunctional civilization. The current political state that we have right now does not offer a framework in which the normal flow of life or the supply of goods and services will be able to continue in any kind of state of emergency whatsoever. During COVID, that was probably the closest we got in recent memory to a potential collapse of the state and society. Now imagine something like COVID, but much more drastic, much more perilous, and much more challenging. The state that we have is just simply outdated with respect to the development of the productive forces. And emergencies, whether it's a world war, whether it's an environmental disaster of some kind, or something else we can't even foresee, such as civil unrest. And I'm not talking about Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about the kind that involves guns. Of course, we wouldn't be the catalyst for that. It would happen because of the madness that has already taken root in our country already. But in any case, all of these would probably be all it takes to do the current state in, so to speak, as far as its current form. Now, granted, there's a strong possibility that the state, that there are people in the Department of Defense or somewhere else that already have a plan for such a contingency, and they have a plan for some kind of very strong and robust, technologically based fascist dictatorship that they have planned. That's very possible. But, hypothetically, level with me here, if our Constitution was suspended, if our rights were completely stripped away, and the veneer of a democracy was gone, and the veneer of a republic disappeared, formally speaking, there are no more laws. We don't have to follow any laws. At least the legal framework that exists now is gone. And Americans, according to our founding fathers, would have the right to resist that takeover by any means necessary, and our party would probably be interested in doing that in the case of that eventuality. So use your imagination.
Okay.
But the idea that American democracy, the American state in some form may survive, but American republic and democracy and constitution probably won't, because it's actually outdated. It's literally not functional. It's a dysfunctional state. It's not able to adapt to the increasingly, fast-paced, extremely polarized historical circumstance of information technology and social media and the inflammation of passions and emotions and psychologies, and the rise of cybernetic economic systems, which just operate on the basis of feedback loops rather than unidirectional systems of command and authority. So that's a whole disaster as far as the state is concerned. And yeah, I mean, anticipating its collapse is not really that far fetched.
Okay, America is an extremely wealthy country when it comes to resources. We're not going to run out of resources. We also have a lot of manufacturing in this country. We're number 2 only to China, and our state is now more than ever extremely powerful, especially when it comes to crushing domestic uprisings. It has proved it over and over and over again, dude.
And why does it seem like January 6th almost completely made everyone lose their mind and topple everything?
It seems that way. Does anybody really think January 6th was going to be January 6th in particular? I'm not talking about what Trump did with the
Also, why was there no toilet paper at the store during COVID if we're so
shortages,
wealthy?
man. People can have. America in the 30s had fucking bread lines, dude, and massive shortages. We had third world fucking
All right, so
brother.
it's a shortage. So if I can't wipe my ass, I'm going to be really angry, and so will a lot of other people, and that's probably going to do something.
Listen, Haas, I love you guys. I'm actually outside. I just came to talk. I'll be listening to you guys though. I'm doing something. Sorry for the. Sorry. I love you guys though.
All right, for sure.
All right, take it easy.
Yep. See you later. All right, let's bring on. Is there no one else requesting or?
One sec. Sorry, I was messaging Kyle. He wants me to say that Canada doesn't get a choice. Canada will be part of the United America. So get on board with the ACP Canadians. It's now or never. So bringing up next, let's see. Let's do Euthanon.
Hello. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of criticisms against the ACP. There's a degree to which I respect your party, but ultimately, I think it's kind of a traitorous organization, traitorous movement. So that's my main argument there.
All right, that's it though, or what else?
No. I mean, obviously, there's the reason for why I think that, but ultimately, I think that you actively try to fight against a state that you're meant to be loyal for, and I believe
Based
that
on what?
someone. What's that?
Based on what?
And I believe that someone that ultimately cares about improving America is a genuine reformer, is not someone that wants to destroy, it is someone that wants to build, right? So you actively supporting, or not materially supporting, but rhetorically supporting
I think
our
that's, with
adversaries.
nuance, I think that's fair, but it doesn't account for people who have balls. What about them?
I mean, I think the people that ultimately, balls aside, I think that what is principled is to support to support your state, right? You should actively be improving it.
I agree, but for example, people like me who have testicles, it's kind of hard to have your position.
No, I mean, I don't think that. I think that your position is kind of inherently barbaric. I don't think it's about having balls. I think that people with balls can be
The
civilized
American
too.
state is
Can you
inherently barbaric.
name one state or civilization in the history of mankind that was not the product of barbarism?
Initially, they all were. You're right, but after many, many years, that kind of state ends up cementing itself, right? Like the United States did
How long?
250 years ago, right?
The Chinese state cemented itself before the barbarian Mongols brought it to its heels.
You're right. You're right. There are cases, but even in that case,
There
with the
aren't.
Mongols,
There
no.
aren't
But even
cases. This is the
sure,
law of history.
sure. But even in that case, when the Mongols, overtook China, that was a terrible thing. That was a horrible thing. So why would you want anything remotely similar to that?
Not about what we want. It's about understanding the laws of history. Barbarism, as you call it, is the foundation of all change, all history.
But just in principle, wanting this change is something that is already morally
We don't.
incorrect.
All right, it can be morally incorrect or morally correct. I don't care. Neither do the laws of history. It will happen.
Because
Either submit to it.
you're ultimately just like an atheist, right? I mean, you claim to be like a believer of God, but you ultimately just think that like might makes right, and you don't think believe in principles,
If you read the Old Testament, I think God agrees with me about this.
Okay, well, I mean, there's an argument to be made that God is also has some degree of evil within him, but regardless, I mean, I think it can be argued that you should be actively trying to improve the institutions. And the reason I'd call you traitorous, by the way, and I think you might agree with me, given this sentiment that you have. I mean, you constantly support these foreign entities. You talk about like, oh, we shouldn't be like focusing on these foreign countries like Israel, like Ukraine, but we should be focusing domestically. But all you talk about is Palestine, Iran, Russia. You don't actually, you barely even talk about the things going on in America. Apart from, I'll give you this. Like the social work that you guys put in, I do respect that. But apart from that.
Well, our country is occupied by the same people that those countries are fighting against. So, of course, we're rooting for them.
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think that's just insane. You know what I think about that is like, that's just very clearly like a traitorous talking point. You know, it's like, oh, you know, we actually have to support the destruction of our own state, and you know, the people over there, right, the Iranians, they're also on the right. Don't you think that
So
sounds kind of insane?
I don't know what you're talking about. What are you referring to when you say our state? What is our state? Can you
Our state,
elaborate?
yeah. Our state is the United States, the political entity that you seek to undermine.
What is the basis? What is that political entity? Can you describe it? Like, what is it based in? What is that?
I mean, what do you mean? The United States is the you know, political legal entity that has sovereignty and authority
What's
over
the
the
basis
territory,
of that?
right?
What's the basis of that sovereignty?
Well, ultimately, it's the fact that they control the guns, right, and they have the monopoly on violence. But I don't see
So
anything
just
wrong with
because
that.
some guy has a monopoly on violence, I have to be loyal to them based on what? Why?
Well, I don't think that's the only reason, but I can talk about that. I mean, if this, you know, the very notion
Do
that
it.
All
you
right,
put
so
forward.
let's say I take a gun and I break into your house. Do you have to be loyal to me now?
No, but if you took over my house and you lived there for
Why
fucking
not?
for 300 years and you raised your children in my house, then that would rightfully be your house, wouldn't it?
But how has the U.S. government?
We aren't slaves to the government. We are citizens. We actively participate within. We are not subjects.
Okay, yeah, okay. So it's not just someone with guns. You're claiming the people rule in America, right?
Well, look. I recognize that all societies, including the U.S., aren't, you know, completely democratic. They aren't as democratic as they claim. There's
Can
some
you
varying
please
elements,
at the bottom
but
of this thing?
no,
I'm supposed
but you wait. But you're right. We do actively participate in American kind of civil society. You're right. Yeah, we participate in the culture, in the institutions, in the
Okay.
monetary system. Yeah.
So what am I betraying exactly?
You are betraying the system that built the roads. You're betraying the system that people have faith in. You are betraying.
What is the system? What's a system? Is that from cybernetics?
No. I mean, like the political legal structure, like the legal framework,
What
the
is the basis of
civilizational
that
framework.
framework? What is that? What is it based in? What is it?
Are you not like grasping what I'm saying? It's based on a
How am I betraying that by rooting for Russia and Iran and Palestine?
because it's not just that you're doing, but because the international system is not characterized, as you would say, by class struggle or something. It's characterized by states. It is because it is a game of competition, and in this game our interests are put against the interests of states like Iran, right? A state is something.
Can you give an example of how the interests of Iran contradict the interests of the American people concretely, not using abstract gibber, just concretely?
Well, they contradict the interests of the American state and by extension the American people. Yes, but the
Okay,
reason.
so is that because this is the only possible state that people in this country could ever possibly have?
Well, what do you mean?
I mean, like, why should we be loyal to the current state? Give me a reason.
Well, there's several reasons, but sure. I mean, just
Just give me
broadly.
one concretely. Just one.
Okay. Well, I would argue that it is just the most. Let's just argue from utility. Then it is just the most practical thing to keep things peaceful and to develop the country
All
effectively.
right. Okay. I just wrote that down and I internalized it and I adopted it. But the problem is that we're still spiraling into World War III and everything's still collapsing. So can you please
The
tell us?
reason, oh, well, as a matter of fact, the reason why the international system is collapsing is because all of these rogue states are trying to
Uh-huh.
undermine our
So
influence, right?
so you're saying we should just nuke the world because we don't like the rogue states?
No, because I take politics seriously. Obviously, that's not what we should do.
So how is the American state going to defend our interests if it can't deal with the fact that there are states it considers rogue which have nuclear weapons? And how is it going to deal with them?
Well,
Go
it
ahead.
needs to use, well, it needs to do what all great powers have tried to do, at least to some extent, which is to use kind of some comprehensive diplomacy, right? Like I'm willing, and I'll give you this, like I'm willing to change Taiwan. Like if we can have, like, I'm willing to say, like, we can negotiate, we can like sort of Hong Kong agreement over Taiwan, but
You sound very young and very naive, and I hate to break it to you, and I don't want your heart to be broken by you finding this out if you were ever to be put in a position of power of any kind whatsoever. But just by having that stance of willing to actually talk to the Chinese and negotiate a solution and possibly give them Taiwan, that is something that would make you, in the eyes of the current state that you claim we have to be loyal to right now, a traitor.
not at
They would
all.
regard you as a foreign agent of China just by having a moderate, realistic position of using diplomacy, and you would be hunted and branded just like Scott Ritter and Douglas McGregor and all these other people. You'd be branded as a traitor. They would stick
No,
a
not at
bunch
all, not
of
at all. Because me compromising on one, two, maybe three
yeah,
geopolitical issues.
and
No, no, no.
that's
That
all it would
no,
take.
because
On
I
that's
don't
all.
fundamentally want to. I don't fundamentally want to
It
undermine
doesn't.
the
It doesn't.
nation. I don't want to undermine.
It
It
doesn't
doesn't matter.
matter. It doesn't matter.
Euthanon, brother. None of the people that our government is targeting and brandishing as traitors, well, the majority of them, they don't want those things either. They just had a moderate position when it came to diplomacy, and that's all it took for them to be branded as traitors. That's all it took. Isn't that sad?
Okay, well, sure, but even if that's sad,
You can
okay.
be fully loyal to the US empire. You can be fully loyal to the system. You could say, I don't want a radical change. I don't want to
Oh,
radically upset
okay.
things. I just think we should be a little bit realistic and negotiate with the Russians in Ukraine or negotiate with the Chinese with respect to Taiwan. And that's all it takes for you to be regarded as an enemy of the state and a traitor.
Okay,
That
sure. I
is
mean, I don't look.
crazy.
I don't think that's ideal, and I don't know the degree to which what you're saying is true, but I'll assume it is. Okay, I'll take for granted what you said. Even within that context,
It
then
is.
I would not. I would not go full anti-American and full oppose the U.S. in every capacity like you guys do. I would not try to overthrow the state. No, in that case, then I would say, sure, fuck it. Then the American empire is what we're gonna pursue. Because even the American empire, to a large extent, benefits the American people. It benefits the American state. And to say otherwise, by the way,
Wow.
and to say otherwise is to contradict all of the empires, all of the states in history.
That all the empires in
The
history have collapsed.
during the period of the British Empire during the Industrial Revolution, the British people lived in slums and in squalor.
Yes, and look where they
While
live now, and look how they live now. They live much better, don't they?
as a result of the United States' hegemony, and as a result of the labor governments that gave them social
No,
welfare
I mean, what
benefits.
The
you just
Marshall
pointed out.
Plan.
You just pointed out such a perfect example. I mean, yes, indeed, during the period of industrialization when British imperialism was all over the place, yeah, the British people lived really bad. But as a product of that imperialism, at least to some extent, where they brought resources from abroad and they largely industrialized and they kept the Germans
So, Euthanon,
outside.
do you read books like fiction books?
Fiction, no, not really.
All right. Do you ever watch fictional movies?
Sure.
Do you ever just kind of like a character and see where they're coming from?
Yeah.
Even though they're not even real in this case, right?
Sure.
Well, I may not be North Korean, I may not be Russian, and I may not be Chinese. But if someone were to tell me that a so-called empire has the right to plunder my country and rape my people and slaughter them just because it benefits their citizens somehow, I would really sympathize with the man who responds to that by saying, why don't they eat a fat nuke and let's nuke their capital cities and burn them all and slaughter them all? And I'm not even from their countries, and I would still respect that and
You see
sympathize
the
with that in my
difference.
heart of hearts.
Sure, I can see that point. The difference here is that you're on the beneficiary side. You as an American, you're benefiting. So the only thing that you're doing, it's actually kind of a, it's actually very much. Wait. I let you go. I mean,
it's not.
it's very much like this cucked thing where you want to undermine your own power. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna be one to say that the American empire is so evil that we're killing all these people. Sure, some bad things happen, don't get me wrong. Some countries are left with little sovereignty. That is true.
Okay.
But we are
Okay.
not this destructive entity. As a matter of fact, if anything, we are a civilizing force around the
Oh
world.
my God! All right.
So
enough. Let
I
Haas
think it's
talk.
I think it's interesting how we've gotten you to just jump right to fascism
How
after
is that
being
fascism?
confronted
How
with
is that
it.
fascism?
I don't feel the need to explain
Well,
why it's
you
fascism.
even
I
you
think most.
agree with me. I mean, you yourself are pro. I guess you could say
All right,
Tellurocrat.
you are very young and you like to gibber a lot, and I want to have a chance to say something, so I'm muting you right now. You have a lot of energy, I could tell. You'll get burnt out. Don't worry. But in any case, here's the issue, buddy. It's not even a matter of me, deciding to support anyone. The fact of the matter is, if there was ever a U.S. empire, as you say, that official one, like a formally declared one, that decides it can stomp on the rights of other nations for the benefit of its own citizens, I wouldn't need to respect or wish for anything. There will be a thermonuclear war on a planetary scale that will probably wipe out 80% of humanity. And that's just because no one's gonna take that shit. Why would they? How could you even blame them? Even if you did blame them, it wouldn't matter because you're still gonna eat a fat nuke.
Yeah.
Moreover, I find another problem with your reasoning, right? Besides the fact that the consequences would be a planetary scale thermonuclear war of annihilation. When you draw a distinction with respect to the dignity and humanity of others that are not of your country, and you say this is in our, and this is just assuming it is in our interest, which it's not. If you understand the system of imperialism or super imperialism economically, it actually impoverishes us. It doesn't benefit us. But even if I were to grant you that it did, the issue is if you draw a line in the sand and say, well, they're non-Americans, so we could do whatever we want with them as long as it benefits us, the beneficiaries, the Americans, that hard line that we draw with respect to defining the humanity of others in relation to our humanity gets applied to us too in indirect ways we can't even control. Suddenly that savagery, that barbarism, that tribalism inevitably comes to define how we relate to each other as Americans, because after all, there's divisions among us as Americans too. If we sacrifice our humanity, our fundamental humanity, and become uncivilized savages and beasts and not barbarians, because our barbarians are actually great, but in this case, animals, having the morals of beasts and animals, what's going to prevent that from spilling over and having us start cannibalizing each other? Why does it suffice that we're Americans on paper? Why don't we look forward and accentuate more divisions, tribal divisions amongst ourselves, to search for where the real humanity is, the real humanity that's worthy of dignity and respect? That's the issue with this cynical false realism, which regards humanism in general as some kind of cucked libtard shit. The problem with that is that it fails to establish clear parameters as far as how the humanity of your tribe can be defined. Those parameters are never clear. The savagery you use against others is a savagery you'll inevitably use against your own people, who won't even be considered your own people anymore. So, by the way, this savage, game theoretic understanding of international relations and this frank attitude of complete irresponsibility with respect to the future of mankind as a whole is exactly why the United States has lost the mandate of heaven on a global scale. It's why the Chinese are stepping in. The Chinese, with their Confucian humanism, their Confucian values, they understand the basics of mutual respect and dignity. And other countries feel that way. It's not just how the Chinese feel about themselves. This is the experience other countries have with respect to them. And this is why the U.S. is losing, and this is why it's producing insane people such as yourself who are now advocating for what? The complete extinction of mankind. And it's sad because, frankly, Euthanon, I know I'm talking a lot, but trust me, you'll walk away from this with a lot to think about. As a powerless person whose opinion means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things, you are allowed to have whatever ideology you want. You're allowed to have whatever belief you want. You're allowed to literally think whatever you want. But instead, you decide to cuck yourself and pretend like you have power, which you don't, by adopting what? The ideology of the current system and pretending like it's a consequence of some moral or ethical conclusion you've arrived at in your own head. No, you're acquiescing conveniently to the shit that's on the table already in front of you. And you're turning that into an ideology. Why? Why? You're doing it for free. You don't even have a slice of the fucking pie that you're demanding we all sacrifice our blood to bake. You don't even have a fucking slice of it. You could literally imagine any kind of fucking pie you want. And the one that you decide to raise to the dignity of an ideology is the one that you'll never even have a fucking slice of. It's pathetic, man. Please rethink it.
Yeah.
I'll unmute.
Before we move on to another guest, I just want to say at the beginning, youth and like Haas said, I think they're young with a lot of energy. But if you said that you want something to be built, you want you want reforms. And I would say if you think that's possible, you think there's any way to reform and improve and build something better without directly challenging this global or this global empire that Haas is talking about, which uses the U.S. state as a tool. Join like the Bernie Sanders campaign. Join a social democratic campaign, because I come from a social democratic
Eddie,
background.
apparently ACP Records, sorry to interrupt you, they're claiming, according to my chat, that they cannot join because myself and Rev are co-hosts, and that we have them blocked, and that's why they can't join. I don't know if that's true.
Maybe. I don't
That's
have
how Twitter.
many people blocked at
But
all. I don't know
we
about
will
you guys.
rejoin as speakers,
Yeah, I'll
and
back
that
down.
way, yeah, we'll rejoin as speakers, and that way, if this is true, we won't have them.
Right.
And please remove me as a co-host if
Go
that's
ahead.
possible.
I'll do that now.
Yeah, stop co.
But to what I was saying, if you think that something new can be built without directly challenging and revolutionizing the U.S. state, join a social democratic political campaign, because that's what I did. And when I watched them with my own eyes rig the election against Bernie Sanders for proposing the most moderate reforms imaginable, such as universal health care and rolling back the U.S. war machine a little bit, all of the forces of the Democratic Party and the corporate media descended upon Bernie to make sure that he didn't win the nomination. And that's what happened if you try and reform the system. The Democrats come, they co-opt whatever movement you're trying to create, and they destroy it from the inside. The only way to actually build something is communism, is to understand that, as Haas says, politics is war, and we have to directly challenge this global imperialist system that's occupying our country. There's no working together with them. There's no begging them for reforms or to build something new. You have to fight them, and you have to do it ruthlessly and strategically if you want to build anything. And that's what history has shown.
How is universal health care a moderate reform?
Because
it seems
the
like a
entire
pretty
developed
extreme
world has
reform.
it, except for the U.S., and we have the lowest outcomes, or the worst health outcomes in the world, with the most expensive care. And even
The entire developed world has universal health care. It's not like a. So do you include a multi-payer system, or do you mean just single payer system, universal health care?
Right now, single payer healthcare is a completely.
So you're including a multi-payer system.
Even the other capitalist countries have single payer.
We're talking about a completely nationalized healthcare system.
I have a question just before I go, but it was great talking to you. If you want to answer it, obviously, it's quite a particular thing. But I've looked at the ACP website, and I've seen the map, and I've seen that the capital, right, the place where ACP radiates from, is like in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. Just out of curiosity, is that where you would build a new capital? Just purely out of curiosity.
I mean, it's I can't speak for Eddie, but it's what I want.
One recommendation for that. I'd recommend Cairo, Illinois. It's a very central location. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's got to be the barbaric Rockies to me.
Fair. All right, see ya.
I just want Chicago because it's the closest city. It's purely selfish. But
I mean, Chicago should have been the capital in the 1930s. Should have been moved way longer ago. Now it's got to move even more to the west.
Yeah, true. All right, should we bring in Aaron? Looks like.
Yep, I can't see a lot of these people, but please bring on all of these people who I've blocked.
I'm trying to find one who's I don't see anyone that looks like a super big hater. Let's try this person actually.
By the way, I mean, if I block you, it's because you're shitting in my replies, literally shitting. If you've ever shown even a willingness to engage as a sapient human being, of course I'm not going to block you. But if you are a basically, not even sentient bot retard who's just shitting, I'm going to block you. Anyway, go ahead, Kenema, whatever your name is.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
I want to make some question about the part of your constitution concerning about
what country are you? What country are you from?
Romania.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. About the creation of enterprises of the local chapters. So I have two questions, concerns. The most important one is that through the enterprise, maybe the state could gain access to personal data of the local chapter members, since they will be, of course, part of the enterprise too, and also personal data of party supporters who have dealings with the enterprise.
The answer is that they already have
Yep.
it. They have everything. They've got everything they want.
Not only of the members of your chapter, but also
they have your data, sir. They've got you. You don't think they have you? You're all the way in Romania. They have you.
Also the supporters that we will have dealings with the enterprise.
Sir, they have the data of everyone on Earth that they
could
want.
be listening.
I don't know what
they
to
could
tell
be
you.
recording they could be doing a screen recording on your cell phone right now while they look through all of the text that you sent to your significant other. The NSA can do whatever they want post 9/11.
Anything they want. They have it all.
That that most of the people who take part in political struggles or in working class struggles all over the world don't necessarily comment or have internet activity. So it's not.
I actually think that's wrong. Name one case where that's the case.
One case. I know many working people who are part of trade unions or something like that who don't have internet activity.
Yeah, but is there a single political movement on Earth that isn't somewhat on the internet?
Yes, the leaders of the political movement, of course, they are on the internet. Every one supporter of the political movement are not necessarily on the internet.
Yeah, of course not. But in the 21st century, any viable, up and coming, successful movement is on the internet heavily.
Yes, okay.
I think of it as like one of the grave diggers of capitalism that capitalism itself creates is the development of the means of communication. Like as technology has advanced, we've gotten this ability to reach so many people, with short videos or posts. So any party who's not utilizing that as a tool in the 21st century, I mean, they're just not going to be legitimate. The internet is too big of a thing.
Yes, we're not talking about that. Of course, you have to be part of the internet in not in every way, but in some ways, of course. But if a communist party, a revolutionary party, should get their money from the people, the supporters, and you have to protect the data of the supporters. You don't have to.
Sir, I can't protect anyone's data. As the FBI is literally knows what shape my ball sack is right now. I'm on kick.com/infrared. They've got thermal image. They've got everything. They know everything.
Of course, first of all, you are the leader. Of course,
they know the amount on my ass just through my voice right now, by the way, not even watching the stream. And you need to understand how advanced the ability to collect data is, because it was extremely advanced 30 years ago. 30 years ago, okay, they could tap any room they wanted remotely. 30 years ago, they could listen in and hear anything they wanted in any room remotely. Okay? So that was 30 years ago. Imagine what they have now. You couldn't even imagine it. They've got everything. They've got literally everything. There's no such thing as data privacy. There's no such thing.
So we should give every single information to the state, the name of the sponsors, the name of everyone.
We're not giving anything to anyone, but I'm just telling you.
If the payment is being done through the enterprise, so it's necessarily the data goes to the state directly.
Sir, how old are you, with all due respect? Hello?
Hello? Yes?
Yes. May I ask your age?
Yes. 25.
You're 25 and you're asking these dumb questions? Sorry, but this is incredible. Is your name Codalong?
No.
What do you think about AI?
That is a useful technology which can be, in a socialist system, it will be used for the benefit of the people. Nowadays,
what do you think about spouses, wives? Do you have any opinions on wives?
Wives?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand that word.
You know what I think is I think you're Codalong. That's what I think. Can you just give it up and admit it?
Codalong?
Yeah, Codalong.
I don't understand what you're saying. Let me...
Can you just talk in a normal accent? Because I know you're trolling.
No, I'm not trolling.
You're not trolling?
Yes, and I can give you my second concern, which is not that important, and that maybe the Workers' Party, a Communist Party, should differentiate itself from a bourgeois party, a party that serves a system, and not promote the notion that the party should work as a business and should not, and stuff like this.
So where do we get money?
You don't have to have an enterprise.
Oh, we don't need money.
What?
We don't need it? We don't need money?
No. You don't have to have an enterprise to get money.
So how do we get money?
You can take sponsors without an enterprise.
Will you sponsor us so we don't have to?
What do you mean sponsors? Who's going to sponsor us?
Sure,
you just get a billionaire like the PSL.
The supporters of the party. You can have an enterprise, for example, if you have a party newspaper or a party website. For that part, of course, you can have an enterprise, but not every enterprise.
You know what? I'm going to stop being polite. You're 25 fucking years old and you're fucking talking about newspapers.
Newspaper doesn't mean you can
better fucking troll. What is this fucking nonsense? Why are you talking about fucking newspapers to me? I wipe my ass with a fucking newspaper when there's no
newspaper can be an online form too.
You're telling us to sell newspapers? What is this fucking nonsense?
Newspaper, I mean a website. Whatever.
What do you mean a fucking website? This isn't 2004. We're just gonna get hits on the website and gets. Listen, brother, you got
to fund the party.
You have been living under a rock for 30 years. When the internet just came out, you woke up gibbering about websites and newspapers.
I don't know if you don't know. Many big communist parties around the world.
Your way to make. All right, listen. We have to make money to expand and for our operations to increase in scale. We can't.
I don't say that you don't have to get money. I say that you don't need an enterprise to get the money.
So how do we get it without enterprises? How do we get money without enterprises? No one is supporting us. We don't fucking have billionaires. Where do we get it from? You tell us. Do you have money? Are you a billionaire? Will you give it to us?
Please.
We don't have what the PSL had, which is $12 million from a billionaire for free. We don't have that. So what do you offer us, sir? We are actually all broke. I am personally broke. Eddie is fucking broke. Rev is broke. I don't know if Rev's broke. Rev works full time.
I'm halfway broke.
You're just halfway broke, so we're all
Well, but
fucking
I have a
broke here,
website
all right?
though, so I'll take the Midwestern Marx website, and then I'll just give you guys.
If
a
I
bit of
hear
the
about newspapers one more fucking time, I might go full Jason Unruh about this whole thing. I'm just kidding. That's a joke. But fucking newspapers.
All right, let's move on. Thank you for your time.
No answer, by the way. Nothing. I mean, if that was a troll, you won. You triggered me. All right. So congratulations. Please frame this stream and save it.
Oh, the guy was gonna. Oh, here we go. We'll bring in James.
He goes, "You don't need enterprises. You could have a newspaper." Oh my god!
Should have thought of that before.
Yo, Haas.
Yeah.
Bro, I'm your biggest fan. I don't actually want to say anything of substance. I'm just saying hi.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I love you guys.
Peace. Love our supporters. Kareem, please, Kareem, be our biggest hater. Where are all of our haters? Where are these people who are underneath every single one of my tweets who live
All right,
in
someone
my
in the chat said that they couldn't join because I blocked them. Well, I'm not a co-host, so they can join. So what's the issue now?
There should be none. All right, let's try this person. True Star. I'm trying to invite people who seem like haters, but it doesn't look like any are coming up, stepping up. What's up, True Star? You got the floor. You are muted, my friend.
So these people that shit on us every day and cry and bitch and whine about us every single day,
Hello?
has the balls to come in here
Wild.
and actually
Yeah.
speak their piece.
Yeah, hello. Just wanted to know, are there any kind of popular left-wing podcasters? Because I haven't come across either on YouTube or on social media. So the right-wing ecosystem is more louder, I feel.
Midwestern Marx and Infrared. That's all you need.
Can you recommend some?
Midwestern Marx on YouTube, Infrared on Kick and YouTube. That's all the podcasts you need right there.
Okay.
Or DD Geopolitics is good too. I don't know. Yeah, we're looking to talk to haters right now though. I appreciate the question though.
No, keep them on.
Okay.
Keep them
all
on.
right, never mind.
Yeah, the thing is that what I felt that most of the left-wingers are stuck in the communist era ideology, and they are not up to the mark, up to the date on the social media or the latest technology. They are not what you call leveraging more on the technology. They are stuck in the Soviet era, I feel.
All right. Is that all?
Yeah, that would be all.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Eddie, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. All right. Moving on. Let's see. Please, God, give us someone who hates us. Let me see. All right. This looks like it might work. All right. Pinky, please tell us why we're fascist red browns.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far, but I have I guess a bit of a question. It's not very antagonistic. If you guys are looking for more antagonistic questions, you can.
Well, we're not really getting any right now, so just go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask. I remember not too long ago, I saw a lot more of the term Maga Communism around ACP circles, and obviously that seems to have faded to the background or completely gone away. Have you guys?
I think no. I think it's just we won. I mean, everyone's MAGA now. It's superfluous. MAGA won. There's no look at we all thought Kamala would even win, but I just feel like if Kamala wins, it was rigged at this point. I mean, MAGA is in the background. It's everyone's MAGA now. It's not really. it's not really. Now we can be more critical toward Trump because we've all taken for granted, both the haters of MAGA and the supporters of MAGA have all taken for granted its historical contribution to American history in a way that's irreversible. There's just no way to escape it. And now we're here. And, Trump supporters now are like MAGA. They're 2 layers of MAGA, right? The one that already has made an irreversible effect on the course of American history, and being a really big Trump superfan, which, Trump, he's kind of become mainstream in a way, so it's just, it's over, what else can we say? The point got across.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, because if you guys are interested in feedback, a lot of times when people even hear like about the idea of ACP and things like that, and but then when they hear like MAGA communism, they're like, bro, Trump, really? The guy who supports Israel, the guy who supports all this stuff, like.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get that, but a lot of it was also like, oh, but Trump's a scary fascist, and it's like, well, no, Trump's a mainstream American. He's like the mainstream right now. Like it's not like some like looming fascist threat. It's like, well, no, I mean, Trump is just a very boring, bog standard, politician right now. No, we're not. I mean, yeah, we're not. But we wanted to awaken people to the fact, because here's the problem: the so-called left, which it's collapsed at this point, but at the time of 2022, when the term was coined, they still had this faith in like pre-MAGA Democrat politics, where it's like, oh yeah, we could just like go back to Bernie Sanders, or we could push Biden to the left, or we could whatever. And they just didn't understand that Trump's presidency was irreversible. Like, that created a completely new political landscape where populistic politics and hyperly polarized social media politics and like political surrealism, all of that was just like permanently, and irreversibly, a fact of what America is now. And it's like, we were just kind of like, yeah, I mean, all Americans, more or less, if they're sensible, agree that like, we want to kind of focus less on this U.S. empire, focus more on our own issues. We don't want any more foreign wars. And, the border situation is crazy. It's out of control. The country's collapsed. I mean, like, all of these things that used to be extreme MAGA talking points, like, everyone agrees with them now. And when we put communism in that context and say the only way we dismantle the empire, is through the Communist Party, or the only way, we rebuild our country is through the Communist Party, that actually gives context to what communism can mean here. But before then, that wasn't there. Before then, maybe Bernie Sanders had free healthcare, so some self-proclaimed communists were like, yeah, let's just have everything be free. And that was the context of communism to them, just kind of like a welfare state. And then after that, 2020, there was a lot of radicalism, quote unquote, where it just became anarchism. Let's just abolish everything about. So it was just a very vague, it wasn't clear what the concrete meaning of communist politics was in America. And we feel like MAGA has clearly established that the context of what it could mean, right? Just because it's created this baseline understanding of the idea, or at least the sense of having a country that's not necessarily the same thing as the global American empire. There's a bifurcation of interests between the global American empire and the domestic interests of America and the American people. So the communists, all we say is we will fulfill the interests of the American people better than anyone else. And I think it's what MAGA communism kind of means concretely and objectively at this point. And that's why we don't use the phrase anymore, because it's superfluous, because maybe a lot of people are still, awakening to the fact. I mean, if you saw recently in Hamtramck, the Yemeni community is like coming out for Trump, which is crazy. I mean, Kamala's probably going to lose Michigan at this point. That's how far it's gone. I mean, it's just not an extraordinary thing anymore. I mean, in my day-to-day life, I'm sure it's the same for Eddie. You know what's crazy? In my day-to-day life, if you're a Democrat, you're actually a fucking crazy person.
Yep. Same.
I've never encountered a normal Democrat in real life.
Yep.
All normal people are just like either apathetic, they're totally conspiracy brained, or they're like, yeah, Trump, because the economy was good. But like, that's the new norm. Democrats are unhinged, crazy people at this point. And I feel like that wasn't the case before Trump. Before Trump, it was the Obama people who were normal. Boomers and old people like the Republicans. And, you know, Trump supporters were kind of crazy. Everyone thought so, at least. And now it's reversed. Now Democrats are fucking crazy. And there's some people in America who call themselves the left. They're not the left. They just want to be Democrats, but even more fucking crazy. And that's, you know, we don't want anything to do with that.
They want to be
So
Democrats, but kill you if you disagree. That's what leftists think.
Right,
Marxism
right.
is.
Which is like I see tweets all the time now. It's crazy from these people. And they're like, guys, you have no idea, but my younger brother who's Hispanic, all of his, everyone is like supporting Trump now. It's really scary. And it's like, yeah, you don't know what's going on. Like, all of society has changed and you've remained isolated in a bubble. I don't know what to tell these people. Anyway.
All right. Thanks for your time.
You bet. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, it's like, you know, like even among Black Americans in the hood, like it's pretty normal to just be pro-Trump. But I don't see anybody caping for Democrats.
The only people I know are like PMC, MSNBC viewers who like work at banks, and there's only a few of them that I hear about from my friends who have to work with them.
And Eddie, they're always fucking tilted and angry and really like super abnormal, crazy fucking people.
Yes, and yeah, the ones that I'm thinking of also like they've got they've got some mental health problems, we'll say, and physical health problems usually.
Yeah, I really avoid those people. Like, that's the difference. It's like, look, before we could be like, oh yeah, Democrat, Republican, there's normal. Now it's like, I don't see a lot of the only normal Democrats at this point are union members who are just doing it because the union told them to, and that's
out
it.
of loyalty. Yeah, that's my grandparents.
Right, that's it. And they're older, and that's literally it. Anyone who's like younger than 40 who's a Democrat is a fucking batshit insane crazy person.
Yep, that's my experience as well. And even what you said about the Trump people, it's either people who are like, yeah, the economy was better, and I don't like the woke shit, or it's people who are like, you know, Trump's cryptocurrency is going to replace the U.S. dollar as the new U.S. currency, and
yeah, just like
still
conspiracy.
The president, actually, what?
Yeah. I mean, put it this way: like the actual far right have become total hipsters, and they're like, actually, Trump is a Zionist shill, and we're like, we might even say like that. That's how much it's like Trump's become mainstream, you know?
Yes, the Fuentes right.
Right, exactly.
The hipster right. That's interesting. All right, you're up, Kareem. I saw you said you have a critique, so.
I do. Now, I'm not going to classify myself specifically as a hater, but listen to, you know, we can see if I am or not. So congratulations actually on starting your party, you and Jackson. I agree with you guys 100% on Palestine, on Western hegemony, and that things like NATO are not only relics, but they're actually a danger to the world at large. So I think we'd agree on Western imperialism 100%. Here's where I disagree. I read communism when I was younger. I'm 30 now. And then I had a right libertarian type of thing. I was an ANCAP for a very long time. Recently, I've been listening to Dave Graeber, Noam Chomsky, and reading about the CNT FAI. And for me, the problem with Marxism is that it has an issue with what I would call elite theory, meaning when Marx postulated to get to a stateless society, you first had to have a if you want to call it a small refractory period or a small or a regime in between, to me, that doesn't work. So if I were to show any historical examples of what I think is communism working at its best efficiency, it wouldn't actually be what you guys are taking a look at now through Marxism. It wouldn't be any regimes like Stalin or anything like that. It'd be something like Rojava, the CNT-FAI, or things like that. So that's where I would come and say, like, hey, my discrepancy is I'd rather see communism be completely decentralized.
Before Haas answers, I just did a book review of a book called Neoliberalism that posits Rojava as the one true existing socialist society and tears apart that idea and talks about how Rojava is basically just like a CIA U.S. military proxy.
But even before we get into Rojava, what happened?
Yeah, right.
What
Go
happened
ahead.
to the FAI? What happened to that?
So to me, the CNT-FAI, which I'm not an expert on, I started studying this.
No, I mean, look, I know everything about what they believed and all that stuff, but like objectively, like what happened?
The UG
and how many years?
Okay.
How many years did that? How many years did it take for them to completely fail and get crushed? Basically,
it took 5. Now, keep in mind this is a prototype of what could work. It's not something that lasted that long. Like the Zapatistas have lasted over 50 years. So that is a testament.
Yeah, but I'm a very practical person, and you know, when you say that our stuff doesn't work, our stuff is the only stuff that's actually seized power ever, in any case, ever.
The Zapatistas also love the Bolsheviks and were greatly inspired by them.
The Zapatistas are not like, you know, they you know, I think a lot of the confusion just comes from this. There will always be authority, even after the state is gone, according to Marx and Engels. There's always going to be authority. There's always going to be people who have more authority than others. There's probably always going to be centralized authority. The only difference is that there isn't going to be an entity that is at war with a given segment of the population, which is what states are. They're organs of class dictatorship. But once classes disappear, that doesn't mean centralized authority or authority disappears. That would be ridiculous. I mean, parents are dictators to their children. Children are not free. I mean, if you have less knowledge and you have less, you know, you're just like not really, you don't fucking know how to, you know, steer a ship, for example. Of course, submit to the authority of the captain. The captain knows what they're doing. So it's like, authority is something that will always be a fact of human existence. I mean, there will always be people who are wiser, who know better, and there will always be people who are less concerned with organizing, you know, billions of people at scale and more focused on their immediate surroundings, right? So that distinction will not disappear with the dissolution of the state, in my view, at least.
Okay. Can I respond to that? So Noam Chomsky breaks down what would be called an unjustified or a justified hierarchy. I would agree. You need parents. You need a ship captain. You actually do need people who are specialists in their field, like you and Jackson in reporting. So I would defer to you, like, okay, when something's going on in Palestine, yes, I look at Jackson's thing and then I go from there. That being said, somebody like a congressman, even a city councilman, or somebody who's elected to do the bureaucratic work of the government, if you see that they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or they don't have the knowledge, or they're just trying to have authority in and of itself, I would consider that an unjustified hierarchy. And dismantling these unjustified hierarchies will make society better.
But who justifies it? What's the criterion of justification or lack thereof?
I think, and I agree with Chomsky on this, that you can do it in a sense of using rational judgment to say, hey, does this person actually...
What is rationality, though? I'm not to be pedantic, but that's an extremely contentious term, as you know from the history of philosophy. So what is the criterion of rationality? Is it logical consistency? Because I would take issue with that, because logic, formal logic, is not the supreme I mean, the notion that humans behave according to the dictates of formal logic is just profoundly wrong, right? And formal logic doesn't even describe nature correctly. How could it describe humans? So I don't know what the criterion of rationality would be.
I think what I mean with rationality is taking a look at it. Just saying, like, let's say this.
Who takes a look at it?
The society in general, the commune, if that's what you're proposing.
What is the commune? What is that?
It's a collective of people who agree to confederate with each other.
How do they agree? All of them individually agree?
Direct democracy or liquid democracy.
How do you have direct democracy when it's 500 million people?
You break it up into, well, it's 500 million people broken up into small towns. Each
How
town,
small?
Depending on how small the town is or the municipality.
What if the municipality has 1 million people?
That could still be broken up into smaller units.
So it's not really direct anymore if it's just a federated system.
What does that help? Like, if you're in a rural place and you become cut off from all the other cities and you have to make all the decisions yourself, like, doesn't that make things extremely inconvenient, especially like in small rural towns like where I'm from? Most of, it would help to be more integrated with the big cities and have things like high-speed rail because it would facilitate more trade into the rural areas. I think balkanization is going backwards. We need more.
Brother, let me ask you a question. We could go into this nitty-gritty stuff, and it's just not very fun. What if I told you that the state is just not personal? What if we depersonalize it? What if we just treat it as a force of nature? Would that change your perspective? That it's just something that exists, and that even if it formally collapses, it's still objectively real, and someone has to take responsibility for it? What if you treat it that way? What if you treat it like an organ in your body? It can fail, but you need it and it's there, right? And, I'll give you an example. Russia, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was anarchy, straight up. The state collapsed. They didn't even collect taxes anymore. Nothing functioned. There were bandits all over on the highways. You could just get robbed. Nothing. There was no laws, nothing. But, there was just a clear understanding by everyone in Russia that there's just this vacuum, that there needs to be a state, that even if they didn't have an ability to justify it ideologically, even if they didn't have the ability to, formalize it, as soon as someone stepped up, like Putin, to take responsibility for it, without even having an ideology or anything to justify it, it started working again. And everything started going smooth, and it just worked. And it wasn't personal. It wasn't an idea. It wasn't a theory. It was just stability, right? And it worked, and people got on. And it's like, that is something to keep in mind. It's not personal. It's not one guy exerting his will on everyone. It might be personal if it's a group of 10 people and one guy is like being an asshole. But when it comes to like hundreds of millions of people, it's really not personal at that point. It's not one person's will superseding the will of all others. It's one person sacrificing every aspect of their own individuality, more or less, to dedicate themselves to the responsibility of attending to this objective machinery that needs to continue going smoothly in order for people's lives to go on.
I think the presumption that it needs to go for people's lives to go on is untrue, because there's instances where we can get together and decide, like in a town hall, that
you need to understand, when you have a country of hundreds of millions of people, or even tens of millions of people, you are taking for granted the concrete and aggregate powers of all of those people and all of their relationships and all of their labor, the sum total of the entire powers of society, producing highways, producing technology, producing supply chains, producing division of labor, and all of that, all of the logistics of the supply of goods and services, all of that, we just take it for granted. And it's too big for us to even map out and conceive of.
Correct.
At an individual level. And so that needs to continue going smoothly somehow.
Correct.
And a town hall is not big enough to assume a level of responsibility to ensure that.
No, but a syndicate is. That's why I actually went from being
it really is.
syndicalist.
There is no formally enumerated power that is big enough, subjectively enumerated power, that could ever possibly be big enough, whether it's an electoral democracy that involves the entire country or something else, that could attend to the responsibility of the smooth functioning of society. Because here's the thing. The dictatorial nature of the state, part of it, isn't just that it's an organ of class dictatorship. That's one way of looking at it, but many other words to say the same thing. It's also a recognition of the objectivity of the state, that it's impersonal. It has no regard for anyone's opinion. It has no regard for any kind of subjectivity. It is an objective reality that needs to continue working, needs to be facilitated, or else the very basis upon which individuals can exist and have opinions disappears, and you have a state of anarchy like Russia after the 1990s. So states are not the product of people coming together and making decisions. This is a huge mistake that people make. Statehood and decision-making have nothing to do with each other. Decision-making is relegated to the realm of policy making. That's relegated to the realm of maybe the day-to-day tasks of a court or a ruler, sure. But the state itself, right? The state itself is an objective reality that is a product of it's an inadvertent product of the sum total of all of the activity of society, concentrated and centralized into a single organ of rule. And only upon the basis of that organ can someone make decisions, sure. But that organ, that central unity and aggregation and concrete centralization of all the powers of society, that is something that exists objectively. There's no way to delegate that democratically to a council or anything like that. It just exists.
I'm not necessarily convinced of that for a couple of reasons. One, it seems to me centralization actually causes more problems than it fixes. If I centralize decision making, or if I centralize anything, it seems to make it less and less efficient.
But you need to understand the reality itself is it's already centralized. Like the mode of production is already centralized. It's a central. Well, okay. I know Milton Friedman is cringe, but he was kind of right about something. It's like if you have a pencil next to you, that pencil is made up of materials whose origin is so diverse, is so vast in scale, just to produce a single pencil, right? And it's like you could say you don't need centralization, but objectively you do. Objectively, these supply chains have to all come together somehow from very disparate origins. From very disparate places. Like all of society comes together in some kind of way, and there needs to be a way to respond to that in scale and in time, which no democratic decision-making organ could possibly do or catch up with, because it just takes too fucking long to ask for the input of 300 million people before decisively responding to the reality inadvertently produced by 300 million people in terms of their existence.
So what I would say to that is, like, I understand what you're calling that the pencil getting resources from diverse places it's a clunky term that, I use with ANCAP circles. And I still like ANCAPs, by the way, but it's called social cooperation under the division of labor. I don't know how to make an LC.
But it's not cooperation, because none of it is enumerated consensually or consciously. It is an inadvertent product of different individuals making many different choices, which aggregates in a rational, central way, unbeknownst to them.
I'm enjoying this conversation, but one of our biggest haters is finally requesting. So do you mind if we table this, Kareem?
Sure.
Table it. I'd love to debate you or Jackson at some point. Thanks for giving me the time, and let's keep in touch. Free Palestine.
Okay, free Palestine. Agreed.
Free Palestine, absolutely. All right, knife maxing. This person lives in my mentions. Let's go. Hello, you have the floor.
Is it just Haas or is it Eddie and Haas?
You got both of us, but you can address
Okay.
us
Well,
both.
I was wondering first of all if I can also have another person come up here, or if it can only do one.
Sure, bring whoever else you want.
Okay, let me check if she's actually here.
Now, I would see it if they requested. What's their name?
It's Nicole.
I don't see a request from Nicole to join.
Damn.
Go ahead though. Let's hear it.
All right, I'll just wait for her when she comes. I guess first thing is I want to address one of the points I know Eddie made. I don't remember exactly if Haas made it or not, but I know Eddie made it. That settler colonialism ended 200 years ago.
In the United States, yep.
Yeah, in the United States. If it ended 200, how could it have ended 200 years ago when the California genocide happened about 150 years ago, and like the Klondike Gold Rush, and the
Right, approximately 200 years. So 150 years, 200 years. When the project of Manifest Destiny was complete and the indigenous modes of production had been completely wiped out, throwing the indigenous people into the labor market, where just like the rest of us, they must sell their labor for a wage in order to survive, making them wage laborers, making them part of the same working class as everybody else here in America.
But I would say that indigenous people, the settler colonialism, and more specifically the indigenous relationship, what makes them still indigenous is it's reproduced through the alienation of wage labor.
Right, they still have their unique culture and nationality, which needs to be protected under a socialist government or communist government. Just like China has their Uyghur Autonomous Zone, where they have cultural protections for Uyghur Muslims and give them political autonomy that is different from or designed to protect their unique culture and nationality. Yeah.
But I would say that also indigenous nations are subject to colonialism in a similar ways to the global south. It's just transformed. So it's not the explicit primitive accumulation of capital of earlier settler colonialism, but it's more transformed into a regular colonialism in the sense that indigenous nations are
it's transformed into they're exploited the same way as the rest of the working class. And yeah, there are unique struggles, and the reservation land is the area with the highest rates of depression and alcoholism, and they've basically just set up these casinos, and told the indigenous people this is all you get, and that's horrible. And what they want is the same thing that all Americans want, which is improved material conditions, industrialization, more jobs, better paying jobs, more free time, all the things that regular wage laborers want under capitalism. Less protections.
Could I ask a question to this individual?
Yeah.
So you would consider yourself like an ACP hater, correct?
Yeah, I suppose, but I consider myself a Marxist-Leninist, to be clear.
Yeah, sure. You can consider yourself whatever. But did you say that when is your kill list coming out?
I don't know. Soon.
And that you said your kill list is coming out whenever we post themselves, right?
Not you.
Not me specifically, but the Minnesota chapter of our party.
Yo.
Was that just a joke, or were you serious?
It's a joke.
But why such hatred? What did they do to deserve to be killed?
Well, I mean, I think the ACP is fascist, to be honest.
Okay. Why is that?
I think it's mainly because of your petty bourgeois politics.
That's really vague, but please elaborate.
It's been a while, but I remember reading one of your articles. I believe it might have been the one before the Marxism is not woke one. It explains, it said that you defended farmers, said that they're not petty bourgeois, that they're just stratified working class or whatever, and that baristas are not true representatives of the working class.
So you would say that, believing in having a base among people like farmers is basically like fascistic, or at least fascistic, right?
Not necessarily, but I think the petty bourgeois politics as a whole is.
Well, yeah, but I asked you what that meant, and you mentioned farmers, so I want to be clear. Farmers who own their own land, so to speak, or at least aspire to, because most of these farmers are in debt, actually, so they don't really own it. They're paying mortgages.
Pretty much all of them.
Yeah, pretty much all of them. But in any case, this is what you would regard as petty bourgeois, correct?
Yeah, and I don't think.
So you said you were a Marxist-Leninist, correct?
Yeah.
And do you feel strongly about the Leninist component, or is it just a label for you? Because I assume you read Lenin, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, have you read Lenin's book, The Development of Capitalism in Russia? I believe it was 1899. You've read it?
Yeah.
What does he say? Hold on. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just have a question, and then you can go. What does he say about the smallholding farmers and the revolutionary strategy? What strategy in particular does he develop with respect to them? And what does he say about them in that book?
I want to be clear, though, that the most American farmers are not the same as Russian peasantry.
Right, but in my writing, what you're referring to is me talking about people who own their own means of subsistence, not people who employ others, people who own their own means of subsistence. This is what you characterize as petty bourgeois politics. Now, if this isn't the case, please clarify, but this is what I understand from what you've communicated so far.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So what did Lenin say about farmers, subsistence farmers who own their own land? What did he say about them in The Development of Capitalism in Russia, in that book? What did he say?
I don't remember exactly.
Did you read the book or no? Probably not, right?
I did a while ago.
Yeah, so basically, like, could you summarize it in any way at all? Or do you just remember nothing about it?
I don't remember.
Okay. Okay, so Lenin, as you know, was embroiled in many debates with the other Russian Social Democrats.
Yes.
You would agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Lenin had a specific proposal that got him in a lot of hot water with the so-called Orthodox Marxists of his day. And he had this idea called the revolutionary dictatorship, the revolutionary democratic dictatorship of workers and peasants. Now, what was the most common reproach among the Marxists of Lenin's day against this strategy?
If I remember correctly,
Now, look, I know these are very niche questions, and typically I wouldn't be this uncharitable, But the problem is that you're kind of joking about killing us for not being true Marxist-Leninists, and it doesn't really seem like you've read anything about Lenin at all. And I'm saying that because Lenin didn't simply distinguish himself from the Social Democrats because he rejected imperialism. To be clear, all of the other Social Democrats paid lip service to some kind of rejection of imperialism, almost all of them, including Kautsky himself. But Lenin distinguished himself because of a very specific notion of what constitutes revolutionary strategy, which broke from all social democratic precedent. And that's why there's Marxism-Leninism today, because that strategy succeeded and it led to a new synthesis of Marxism. You are absolutely clueless about the content of that, which I can't really forgive, because you stand so strongly against us to the point where you call us fascists and call yourself a Marxist-Leninist, and you can't even tell me the basics of Lenin's development of capitalism in Russia, or what Lenin meant by the revolutionary democratic dictatorship of the workers and peasants, and what kind of debates that engendered in the time in which he lived in. If you don't know facts as basic as this, I don't think you're qualified to call yourself a Marxist-Leninist or call anyone else a fascist for that matter. But I'll try to be easier on you and ask you this. What are the 5 stars on the flag of the People's Republic of China? What do they stand for?
Well, the big one is the party, and then the 4 ones, it's the national bourgeoisie, petty bourgeoisie, the workers, and the peasant.
And who were the peasants in China, by the way? Because Stalin actually reproached Mao, believe it or not, in the 1930s and in the 1940s. He said in private that he didn't even consider Mao to be a true Marxist, because Mao, as we know, did not really have a base in the industrial proletariat at all, and rather he had a base among the peasantry. Now, what characterized the Chinese peasant? Were they what relations of production, what relations to the ownership of the means of production characterized them? Could you explain?
I mean, during that time?
The 30s and the 40s, correct.
Well, they were mostly under landlords, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, there was a huge tyranny of the landlords. That's true. But these peasants, were they subsistence peasants? Were many of them peasants you would even call petty bourgeois? Because in isolated cases in which they were able to break completely from the grip of landlords, they could have their own land. Even when they did have landlords, by the way, they attended to their own land, but they had to pay rent to the landlord. But in any case, not dissimilar to the Russian peasants. These are subsistence farmers who own their own means of subsistence. And even to the extent that they didn't fully own those means of subsistence, which of course they didn't, one of the reasons Mao was able to even get into power in the first place, because he was promising them that they would be able to, because they're going to kill the landlords, or depose the landlords, remove them, so that they could finally own their own means of subsistence. And this is why Mao got to power in the first place. Now, would you regard Mao's politics as petty bourgeois?
No.
Why not? He was promising peasants they could own their own means of subsistence. How isn't that petty bourgeois? These peasants didn't have much of a precedent for a communistic form of ownership. They were thinking at the time that they're going to own their own land, their own means of subsistence. And for the ones that already did, Mao accepted their support wherever he could. Not only the peasants, by the way, but even the urban petty bourgeoisie and even the big bourgeoisie that was at least loyal to the cause of anti-imperialism. Mao rallied to his side. And he didn't have a strong base of support, at least, in the industrial proletariat. It wasn't his primary base of support. So how is our politics petty bourgeois because of something I wrote about... Go ahead.
American farmers aren't peasants. They don't just own their own means of subsistence. They control capital, regardless of whether, banks technically own all their shit.
What capital do they control?
It doesn't change the relations of production.
What capital do they control?
They control their machinery.
How do they control it?
They use it and they produce it.
But if it's mortgaged and the banks own it, how do they control it?
Because for all intents and purposes, it's theirs.
So what you're referring to has nothing to do with the fundamental relation of ownership of the means of production. It's a managerial distinction. They're not managed by someone. They don't have an administrator breathing down their neck and managing them. And for this reason, you classify them as petty bourgeois. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting how for you in your warped mind, the basic categories of Marxism have become so distorted that actual ownership of the means of production doesn't matter anymore, but rather the cultural connotations and implications of not having a manager actually defines decisively class distinction in your brain? Isn't that interesting? Or aren't you at least a little curious about how you've stumbled into such an incorrect and false position from the perspective of Marxism, and how you're so confident about it that you're talking about killing us and calling us fascists because we disagree with you about your obviously and very clearly wrong position?
Well, they also have bargaining power that they have leveraged time and time again to keep, for example, food prices up.
Didn't you just mention Starbucks baristas as the epitome of proletarians?
Not the epitome of proletarians, but definitely not proletarians.
Have some Starbucks baristas successfully established unions?
Yeah.
So clearly they have some fucking bargaining power too, don't they?
Yes.
Right. So stop mentioning bargaining power because it's completely irrelevant. In any case, we want to get to the bottom of the issue. You don't know what the petty bourgeois is. You don't know what constitutes the petty bourgeois. But let's even grant to you the idea that we are a petty bourgeois party and we have petty bourgeois characteristics. Although I think I've successfully demonstrated that such a claim and position could only come from a position of ignorance as far as you're concerned. I'm waiting to see if you have some champion you're willing to tap in who actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, I do.
But before they come, we're waiting for them. Before
they're in.
Sure, bring them up. I'd like to ask you a question about the relationship between fascism and the petty bourgeoisie. What about petty bourgeois politics for you is primarily fascist? Where does that come from? You call yourself a Marxist-Leninist. I presume Marxism-Leninism is the synthesis that originates in Stalin's foundations of Leninism. So you're not a Trotskyist, are you? You're a Marxist-Leninist. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So why are you giving so much emphasis to the petty bourgeoisie with respect to your understanding of what fascism is? Do you understand or do you know about the Marxist-Leninist literature, about the class origin of fascism and what fascism is from a class perspective?
I know what fascism is.
Recite to me the verdict of the Comintern with respect to the definition of what fascism is and the class basis of fascism. If you know what the Marxist-Leninist view about fascism is, go ahead.
I know George Dimitrov's quote about being the most reactionary, most imperialist elements of finance capital.
Is that the petty bourgeoisie or no?
No, but it
so
arises.
Where is the emphasis on the petty bourgeoisie coming from? Because the strategy outlined by the Comintern in the Popular Front period was that communists need to actually win the middle classes and the petty bourgeoisie and have them as a base of support for the anti-fascist struggle. That was the verdict of the Comintern at the time. So what are you talking about with this notion that having quote-unquote petty bourgeois politics is somehow equivalent to fascism? Because it's actually the Popular Front in the 1930s that started advocating for collaborating with the petty bourgeoisie, which is why it was termed the Popular Front, not simply the United Front. The popular elements in question, beyond the industrial proletariat, were in fact the petty bourgeoisie, the popular strata, the ambiguous masses in general, including the petty bourgeoisie. The notion of democracy that Marxist-Leninists emphasize so much, Lenin was very clear about where democracy comes from. Democracy comes from the bourgeoisie. Lenin's specific democratic strategy was leveraging the support of the democratic petty bourgeoisie rather than the big city bourgeoisie, which is what the Mensheviks were hedging their bets on. This is basic Leninism, Pumfee. And for someone that has murderous designs on my party on the basis that we're fascists, this level of ignorance should embarrass you. How can you call us fascists on the basis that we're a petty bourgeois party when, according to Marxism-Leninism, the petty bourgeoisie is not the primary base of fascism in the first place?
Fascism arises because of the decay of capitalism and particular reaction from an angsty population, mainly middle class and petty bourgeois.
But whose analysis was that? It wasn't Dimitrov's, and it wasn't the analysis of Marxist-Leninists. Where does that analysis actually originate, since you're so educated, as we've been demonstrating?
I don't know.
Well, I'll actually educate you. It comes from Leon Trotsky. What you are reciting to me is word for word and almost ad verbatim Leon Trotsky's analysis of the origin of fascism, which he regarded as a petty bourgeois phenomenon. I'm sure your Twitter groupies are familiar with the meme of the Hitler particles. That literally comes from Trotsky, who said that there's particles of Hitler in all small business owners and all of the petty bourgeoisie. Trotsky, by the way, who was collaborating with Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan himself. Trotsky himself, by the way, who had fascistic designs as far as his notion of what constituted proletarian dictatorship in the USSR, which would have involved something he called super-industrialism and the utilization of the army to, at gunpoint, expropriate the peasant population and create a fascist tyranny over the 90% majority in Russia at the time. Trotsky, by the way, who fled to Mussolini's Italy looking for asylum and sanction there. Trotsky, this is the fascist collaborator whose analysis of fascism you're drawing on to accuse us of being fascists, and moreover, on the basis of that accusation, to talking about your murderous fantasies about some of our chapters. Don't you feel a little bit ashamed?
No.
You don't, because you don't really care about any of this in the first place, do you? You call yourself a Marxist-Leninist. As we've thoroughly demonstrated, you have no relationship to the theory of Marxism-Leninism. You don't know anything about Marxism-Leninism. You don't even know where your ideas are coming from. I've just proven that they came from Trotsky. And you don't care, because all of this is just for you, and this is my speculation, so I'll ask for everyone's forgiveness as far as factual certainty is concerned. What I highly suspect is that you're just a lonely person who wants friends, and you've managed to find a niche of people who are labeling themselves Marxist-Leninists, who you have come to acquire as friends. And as a consequence of your loneliness, you're hitching a ride on this label. So you could have a social support circle. You could have friends. You could be liked and recognized by people. You could have a sense of warmth and friendship and personality that you probably otherwise wouldn't have. And that's why you call yourself a Marxist-Leninist. It has nothing to do with a principled commitment to the tradition we call Marxism-Leninism. It has nothing to do with any kind of selfless devotion to the cause of communism, whether historical or contemporary. You are a poser, a faker,
Can
and
you
just
add
a
Nicole
pathetic,
up here?
lonely person.
Can you add Nicole up here?
Eddie, please add this person, Nicole.
It's at Nicole FSLN.
Oh, there we go. All right, should be good. Should be up. Nicole.
Hello,
Please
I've
come
never done
rescue
this
your...
before, so please be patient.
Right. We're
It's
asking that
also,
you rescue your fascist co-collaborator. Talking
I want
about
to emphasize
Mark.
that I think she might be nervous because usually when I talk to her, we don't call very often, but also it's kind of intimidating, of course, to talk to someone who has such a huge following and
Well,
actually
she's
has
the one
to
who
defend.
threatened to kill us.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Well,
if anyone should be intimidated, it's us, I guess, right? You come and kill us.
So we're different people. I've not threatened to kill any of you, and whether that's an edgy joke
Well,
or
we'll
not,
hear your
I think
argument
that's
in defense of your friend who wants to kill us. Go ahead, please.
I'm not defending that. Specifically, I'm defending her theoretical ability, which I think is being hampered by her being incredibly nervous for whatever reason.
Well, go ahead yourself then. Explain it for us.
So, I wasn't really thinking of like a start of what I wanted to say, but I what she said, and I'll say is that we're both Marxist Leninists and not like the Hojaist kind and the like People's Republic of China kind, upholding socialism with Chinese characteristics, understanding that even though Russia, Iran, and other countries aren't ideal, they are anti-imperialist, and that contradiction is the main contradiction in this imperialist era, in this hegemonic imperialist era specifically, because before, during Lenin, there was an era of multilateral imperialism.
Nicole, with all due respect, at least as far as Comrade Eddie and myself are concerned, Marxism-Leninism has a very specific meaning. And to the extent that I've been able to communicate with your friend, I have found no evidence that they are Marxist-Leninist beyond the fact that they call themselves one. The things that you've mentioned about supporting China and these other anti-imperialist countries, while laudable in the sense that we at least align with respect to our outlook on foreign policy, it has nothing to do decisively with distinguishing yourself as a Marxist-Leninist, because many people, including Trotskyites, by the way, Marcyites in particular, can have these views on foreign policy and not be Marxist-Leninists. Marxism-Leninism has a decisive significance, and I haven't seen any of that as far as your friend is concerned.
I agree, but that was not me saying precisely why she's a Marxist-Leninist. That was me trying to start off of like our biggest and most important views and positions. In general, emphasizing that like because before this you were debating with like anarchists, anarcho-capitalists, liberals, and right-wingers that don't profess any sort of Marxism, and I'm not sure if we're the first tonight that come from a Marxist, from at least like that sort of position or not. So I just wanted to
Can
say,
you just explain like what your problem is with ACP? Maybe I think that'd be a good jumping off point.
So my problem with ACP is specifically with Jackson Hinkle.
Okay. So your problem with, you don't have a problem with our party, you just have a problem with one of the personalities on our executive board. Do I understand that correctly?
I'm not as clear with I'm not as I haven't looked as much into yours and Eddie's articles as much as I would like to, for me to say concretely whether I absolutely condemn the party or at least think that there is a worrying reactionary trend within it.
Okay, I'm perfectly prepared to defend my comrade Jackson, by the way, but I just wanted to be clear that you don't have any criticisms of our party. You just have a problem with one of the personalities on our executive board.
I have criticisms, but those are secondary.
Okay, then we'll proceed in order. What is your problem with Jackson?
My problem with Jackson Hinkle is that because earlier you said, and you made the distinction between people with general Marxist-Leninist beliefs versus Marxist-Leninists. I also believe that communism is like a scientific term, and we should look at communists how we wouldn't say like someone who read like a couple pages of chemistry is a chemist. We wouldn't say someone who like read like the manifesto and now just debates online is a communist. I know that my friend is very researched, but that's besides the point because I'd rather talk about Hinkle here. I would not consider Hinkle a Marxist-Leninist or a Marxist at all.
Well, you don't know that, but I assume what you're saying is that based on his manner of communication with uneducated people, because that's who he's talking to, you could not know whether he was a Marxist or a Marxist-Leninist. But how could you make then the assumption that he isn't one at all? I mean, for example, if Jackson has, in the capacity of his work within our party, communicated very clearly to the rest of the executive board and to myself personally that he has a good comprehension of Marxism-Leninism and what it is, and the classics of Marxist-Leninist literature, what about what he has said in public, which undoubtedly has probably offended you in some capacity on a personal level, but what about that preempts the possibility that he actually is a relatively well-read Marxist-Leninist?
Because in my opinion, and we're speaking specifically on the conditions of America, we're clear with this, right? Like because different trends are reactionary versus progressive depending on the country, like how Joseph Stalin said in his work Anarchism or Socialism, that advocating for a bourgeois democracy in 1901 Russia is a step up from feudalism, but advocating for a bourgeois democracy in, say, the era of socialism, of course, would be reactionary. I believe that you cannot be as reactionary as Hinkle is and still be a Marxist-Leninist within America specifically.
You mentioned a very concrete issue, which it was at the time, which is the question of bourgeois democracy. This is the extent of involvement in parliamentary politics. This is the extent of the advocacy of bourgeois democratic forms of statehood within the context of feudal states. And to be clear, you are using the term reactionary to describe Jackson because according to you, something has changed in a way that's comparable to the rise of victorious and triumphant socialism in the age of, well, when Stalin was referring to it. So what is that thing that's equivalent to the triumph and rise of socialism that for you, Jackson is reactionary with respect to in our age?
That's in 1901. Just to be clear, before the revolution, before even the bourgeois revolution.
So to repeat myself, because you don't seem to have understood my question.
No. Listen, I'm sorry. I tend to go on tangents, and it takes me a while for me to finish what I'm saying, and I apologize for that. I tend to lose my train of thought easily or get sidetracked easily. But I'll narrow down on this specific point for you because I know that you're kind of getting tired with me, like just being like set up. So specifically in advanced bourgeois country like the U.S., what Marx and Engels specifically were very clear about was that these capitalist the most advanced capitalist countries start dissolving systems like unneeded holdover systems from earlier eras of feudalism, and even before that, like the other stages,
right?
Patriarchy.
And to be clear, Leninism has proven that
Jackson has a reactionary position when it comes to the family, when it comes to gender, when it comes to sexuality. And I don't think Marxist-Leninist.
So let's begin from there, because with all due respect, it's not my intention to offend you. Are you sober right now? Are you on drugs of any kind?
I'm not. I was yesterday. Are you like reading my tweets?
No, I'm not. I'm just listening to your voice.
I mean,
In any case,
I'm sober today, but I'm like
okay.
yesterday I was not.
So the reason I asked you what new development that in this case argumentatively or logically would be the equivalent of the rise of triumphant socialism is Jackson reactionary with respect to, it sounds like you're trying to say that he's reactionary with respect to the progressive developments of bourgeois civilization as it concerns and as it pertains to the development of the family and patriarchy, at least in comparison to feudal society. Is that correct?
Close enough.
So in your view, Jackson is a reactionary because his views on the family somehow represent an attempt to resist the advances of bourgeois civilization over feudalism.
Yes, and I think
Okay, so before we continue, my line of questioning hasn't finished, but thank you for confirming that you believe that. The process of the dissolution of the vestiges of feudalism in England had more or less already been completed by the time Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto. The political superstructure, of course, maintained many of these vestiges and still do, the House of Lords and whatnot, but these are just cosmetic. This is just pageantry. In any case, at the level of civil society and the relations of production, Marx and Engels were clear that England had already more or less succeeded in eliminating feudalism. The United States of America was an even more stark case because we never actually had feudalism here. The closest equivalent would be slavery, which was eliminated in the aftermath of the Civil War. We are now living in the year 2024 where there are no traces of feudalism. How is bourgeois civilization still advancing and still triumphing over the vestiges of feudalism? And what constitutes these vestiges, which would have to, if you're a materialist, serve as the material basis for Jackson's reactionary outlook? If Jackson is a reactionary and represents a reactionary position with respect to the advance of bourgeois civilization and the capitalist mode of production, what is the material basis of that outlook? What you're suggesting is preposterous. It's that there are somehow materially holdovers and remnants of the feudal mode of production that somehow are endangering and producing reactionary outlooks such as Jackson's. So I'll give you the opportunity to clarify your position because it just doesn't make any sense from a Marxist perspective.
Well, although the system has changed when it comes to I'm sorry because like I write down notes as you're talking. Can I have like just like 10, 15 seconds to formulate what I want to say before?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I will say also that I appreciate that you're having this debating speech in the first place because there's not enough Marxist conversation in America, even when there's, very large contentions. So the thing is that the culture in any society is loosely and gains its power primarily from the mode of production that the whole society is based on. So a capitalist culture will have capitalist tendencies, but there comes a time especially in particularly imperialist and colonial and reactionary countries, where formal feudal mindsets still have their place in the society because the capitalist society, the imperialist capitalist society, for example, imperialism has the same, can benefit off of the cultural basis that was already established in earlier areas of colonialist feudalism.
So you're trying to say that U.S. imperialism has succeeded in preserving feudalism. How has it?
Feudalist culture.
Well, culture has a material basis. You're saying the basis of feudal culture is imperialism, but Lenin said that imperialism was the highest stage of capitalism and is the degenerate phase of capitalism. By the
So
way,
actually, may I?
go ahead.
I want to say, I said specifically, I was careful in my wording. I was saying colonialism and imperialism in the highest stage of capitalism benefits from the same types of structures that used to exist in colonialism. But also, I would like to say that
Well, these have to be concrete structures, right? These aren't just parallels. For example, if we talk in vague terms about parallels, we could be reaching back into thousands and thousands of years. In this case, we wouldn't be talking about feudalism. We would be talking about ancient Rome and ancient Greece and the parallels between U.S. imperial hegemony and the hegemony of ancient Rome, which would be ridiculous. So please locate concretely in what former mode of production do Jackson's views derive from? What feudal relation of production forms the foundation of Jackson's views that is resisting progress in the form of bourgeois normal capitalism? Go ahead.
The feudal and patriarchal views on family and gender, but
Nicole, you're describing them as feudal. You're describing them as feudal, right? But in
there's a point.
You cannot locate to me where the feudalism is. So how can there be a feudal superstructure without a feudal base?
There's a point that actually plays into this that I've been meaning to say, but I keep getting caught up in. That when Lenin said that imperialism was the highest stage of capitalism and that capitalism has reached its imperialist phase, if you read the pamphlet itself, he also confirms that ancient Rome was also imperialist. He describes that as another imperialist society. And that's because it's not just capitalism that has an imperialist phase.
Nicole, what was the sentence he wrote directly after the sentence that ancient Rome was imperialist? Can you read that sentence aloud for me, or would you like me to pull it up?
I can pull it up.
Yeah, did you read?
Yeah, just read the sentence directly after. Yeah, both the sentence directly after and the footnote, please. I could tell you're maybe a fan of Bad Empanada, who also doesn't read books.
I'm not
just
a huge
controls
fan
apps.
of Bad Empanada. I like some of his videos on Palestine, but I think he's kind of full of shit in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Let's get to this quote.
Yeah, it sounds like.
And then I'll give you the opportunity to explain to you what Lenin actually meant once you can read it.
Do you have the quote, Rev?
I have it ready at hand. I'll just read it so we can save time. So let's read exactly what Lenin says, because you're actually precisely and completely wrong if you mean to suggest that imperialism, as Lenin was describing it, has somehow created the foundation for a return of previous modes of production as the base. So here's what Lenin says. Okay, well, let me explain to you why Lenin is directly responding to you almost in what he says and rejecting your viewpoint. So keep in mind, here's the context. Before Lenin actually uses the term imperialism, before he writes this book, before this book is well known and widely known and adopted as an official Marxist-Leninist theoretical vernacular, the word imperialism was an extremely vague word. It didn't describe anything in particular, right? It was a vague word that was used to describe, the tendency of building empires. So before Lenin writes imperialism, that's what the word connotated, and that's kind of what it referred to and meant very vaguely in people's minds. So Lenin is addressing that directly. Colonial policy and imperialism existed before the latest stage of capitalism, and even before capitalism. Rome, founded on slavery, pursued a colonial policy and practiced imperialism. But, and here's the part you probably didn't read, but general disquisitions on imperialism, which ignore or put into the background the fundamental difference, so this is a qualitative difference, and this is where your argument falters, between different socioeconomic formations, inevitably turns into the most vapid banality or bragging. That sounds like a pretty good description of your way of characterizing Jackson's views on the family. It's a vapid banality, which attempts to compare it to feudalism and all these other things when there's no material basis for it. Greater Rome and Greater Britain, even the capitalist colonial policy of previous stages of capitalism is essentially, he says, essentially different from the colonial policy of finance capital. So if it's essentially different, we're talking about a qualitatively different mode of production. We're not talking about the return of the attributes of the feudal mode of production or the ancient Roman mode of production with respect to the rise of the imperialism that Lenin is talking about. We're talking about something that is essentially different. It doesn't share common attributes. It doesn't share parallels and similar substances with respect to the material base. It is a fundamentally, qualitatively different material base that is essentially different. Such is Lenin's view on the matter. And this is, by the way, in the preface, I believe. Not in the preface. This is in one of the later chapters, actually. But in any case, by the time of the end of this book, the word imperialism comes to mean something entirely different. It comes to refer to the last stage of the capitalist mode of production. And that is, by the way, not just Lenin's perspective. That is the perspective that was officially adopted by the synthesis of Marxism-Leninism in the Soviet Union and in China as well. All the Marxist-Leninist literature that you could ever find will confirm that, including basic Soviet textbooks that were meant for literal school children.
So when you talk about a qualitative difference between earlier forms of capitalist imperialism and the colonialism of previous eras, I do agree that there's a real qualitative difference.
Nicole, I want this to be faster. So you agree with that, but let me explain to you the problem and give you an opportunity to respond to the problem. The problem is that I asked you a simple question. You said Jackson's views on the family were reactionary, and that in particular they were reactionary because these are feudal mindsets. I asked you, where is the feudal base coming from? Well, you said, well, with the rise of imperialism, these utilize feudal and colonial structures and whatever gibber you were talking about. But now we've clearly established that imperialism is an essentially different and qualitatively new mode of production with respect to feudalism and ancient Rome and all these other places. So you can't call Jackson's mindset feudal. You can't attribute it to feudalism. So exactly what material base you can attribute his viewpoints to, we don't know. We're still in the dark about. So I would like you to clarify that. Go ahead.
I was going to clarify that when I was starting to say that by specifically when
just do it.
I am. I'm sorry. I specifically when Lenin was talking about I'm sorry, when people interrupt me, I kind of lose my train of thought, and I know that I talk for a very long
Nicole,
time.
I just don't think you've thought this through, and that's okay. But I just don't think you've thought it through.
Listen to me for just a second. Lenin was at a point he was talking about Great Russian chauvinism, as a response that the proletarian movement will have to handle. Now, this is already when the Soviet Union was making its transition from a semi-feudal society to not even just a state capitalist society, but instead transitioning to a socialist society. So chauvinism, which is a characteristic of feudalism, should theoretically no longer be a problem here. Why is it a problem here? Because even when those stages are gone, there's still cultural vestiges from the previous modes of production ingrained
So
into.
there's three prongs that I could come up with on the spot with respect to the deep error in this line of thinking. One, if there's a direct transition between feudalism, so to speak, and socialism, and we're talking about this is a matter of what, a decade or 2 decades, then of course it would be reasonable to say there's vestiges of the prior mode of production, which socialist construction is precisely founding itself upon the elimination of. That makes total sense. But we're living in 2024 in the United States of America. The equivalent to Russia's feudal and backward mode of production, you haven't been able to provide it with respect to the United States. That's the first prong, okay? Now, the second prong has to do with this problem of then saying that, okay, Lenin, more or less, is writing about great Russian chauvinism, and that chauvinism was a product and a relic. The context is feudalism. That's actually factually incorrect. When Lenin uses the phrase chauvinism, it's actually a term that comes into popular usage as a consequence of the First Imperialist War, or the First World War, as people call it. When social democracy, when politicians, but in particular, as far as Lenin was concerned, social democrats in advanced capitalist countries advocated and voted for the war credits and advocated the policy of the defense of the fatherland, as they called it, where German imperialism and its rapacious interests in the Balkans were disguised in the name of repelling the threat of backward Russian tyranny or despotism, which is what the German social democrats were doing, or how the French social democrats were saying the same thing, but with respect to the Germans, and on it goes. So the chauvinism, which Lenin is problematizing, doesn't actually come from feudalism. The great Russian chauvinism doesn't either. The context is the First World War, where there are still political forces within Russia who want Russia to remain within the First World War, where the First World War is establishing a context for a Russian form of modernization that is predicated upon adopting the European modern capitalist style nationalistic chauvinism. So you completely have ignored the actual historical context of where the chauvinism Lenin was talking about actually came from. It didn't come from feudalism or some pre-capitalist era. That would actually be meaningless. Now, the third problem, I guess, finally, that we'd have to point our attention to is the fact that, and it's similar to the first problem that we immediately came up with, which is that you're not actually talking about a case in which the superstructure outlives the base, because during the period of socialist construction, the previous base has not actually fully been eliminated yet. Its vestiges are still discernible and can still be located materially. Lenin actually talks about locating the vestiges of the capitalist mode of production in the countryside. He says every minute of every hour of every day, it's being reproduced and replenished in the countryside. It's the kind of direct quote he's famous for saying. So here are the three prongs of my response. Go ahead.
So, can you I wrote down the prongs as you were talking, but I didn't have enough on prong one. Do you remember what you said? Or I won't blame you. I don't want you to memorize.
No, I remember what I said. I said that it's incomparable because even if it's true that we're talking about, which I showed it's not true in prong 3, but even if it was true that somehow there was an immediate and sudden leap from feudalism to socialism within the time span of 10 years, at least, when Lenin is still alive to write about this, even if that's true, that time gap is not comparable to America in 2024 to whatever pre-capitalist mode of production you're trying to say, you know, we've just gotten out of. It's been hundreds of years. So how could a mode of production from hundreds of years ago, hypothetically, I don't even know if that could be said to be true, because America never really had feudalism. We had slavery. But if you're talking about slavery even, how could something from 150 years ago form the foundation, materially speaking, of Jackson's outlook today? It makes no sense.
So I'll start with prong one. Well, I apologize. I know more. I will admit that I don't know enough about British feudalism specifically. But would it be more fair for me to make a comparison? Would you say, I know that the People's Republic of China is still like a third the age of America, but would it be better for me to make a comparison with China in 2024 to American cultural reactionism, for this general point of just chauvinism in particular?
In that case, we wouldn't be talking about feudalism at all. We would be talking about triumphant socialism in the process of overcoming capitalism. And the reactionary thing in that case would be an attempt to defend capitalism in the face of the triumph of socialism, which is represented, in your view, by the existence of China. Now, the problem with that comparison would be that you would have to somehow demonstrate that the socialist mode of production, as it is developing within China, has directly exerted its influence upon America in such a way that has resulted in the transformations in the family that Jackson, I mean, we're very vague about what we're talking about here, by the way, but that Jackson opposes. But the problem with making that argument is that, well, China isn't itself experiencing those same transformations, and it's the socialist country in question.
I think there might have been a misunderstanding on my regards. Originally, I was comparing the issues in Lenin's Russia, and you said that that the time gap is just not at all comparable. I was mentioning
the time gap. You need to understand the precision of the argument. The time gap was with respect to the rapidity of the supposed transition straight from feudalism to socialism that you claimed happened, which it didn't happen, by the way. But I just hypothetically entertained it. That's why there was 3 prongs, right?
I didn't say that the transition was immediate. I was saying that there was a transition happening, and I know that.
No, you said that socialism had already triumphed over feudalism, which it didn't.
That's not what I said.
Well,
I said
it may not have been what you intended, Nicole, but it is what you said. In any case,
no, it wasn't. It just wasn't what I said. I remember what I said. I said that
Nicole,
the USSR was
the pace at which you're speaking leads me to believe you probably don't even remember what you had for breakfast today. So please, let's not pretend that you remembered the exact wording of what you had said. You said that in that case,
I said USSR was transitioning not only from semi-feudalism to state capitalism, but was also transitioning from semi-feudalism to socialism.
And the decisive point of your argument was that it had already done so, and yet feudal mindsets still persisted. If you were meaning to say that it had not done so, why even make the argument that feudal mindsets persisted when your argument was supposed to be that feudal mindsets can persist independently of the original mode of production? See the issue?
That was a genuine mistake of mine, and I don't know the equivalent to self-criticism on online debate or anything, but that was a mistake, my bad. That was a bad example, which is why I'm asking instead to draw a comparison to the People's Republic of China.
Yeah, and I responded about why that comparison would also be I
Well,
mean,
I didn't
as far
say
as I can, maybe there's some genius to it that I'm missing. So please fill me in on the genius I've missed as far as comparing America to China and calling Jackson a reactionary with respect to that.
So, so I apologize for the sloppiness of this original discussion, but I recently wrote an anthropological article on China, and to do so, I interviewed a Chinese friend of mine named I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation. I'm sorry, Leon Zong.
Please immediately get to the point.
That, for example, China's 5,000-year-old relationship with Korea and Vietnam still has the average Chinese person seeing Korea and Vietnam as still opposed to China, even though the situation demonstrates that Vietnam, Korea, and China are allies in no longer opposed to.
So to speed this up, you're saying that this could be an example of how, mentalities that come from ancient modes of production could still outlive their material base. Is that what you're trying to get at?
There's still somewhat of a material base there, but it's very decayed. Yeah.
But I disagree with that. I disagree with that because Korea is hostile to China and so is Vietnam. In the contemporary immediate sense of the word, by the way. I mean, there's something that some, I don't know what to call them, self-orientalists will do in Russia or China. Well, they'll take a given, very immediate, very materially immediate and contemporary dispute between Russia and some country or China and some country. This is from thousands of years ago. But you could apply that to literally anything. Why isn't China fighting the Arabs just like they were under the Tang dynasty? It's nonsense. If China was fighting Arabs right now, they could say this is the result of long-standing things from the Tang dynasty. So I don't buy that at all. Korea and Vietnam are very clearly materially right now. China had a war with Vietnam less than a century ago. Okay, very less than a century ago. Okay. With respect to Korea, South Korea is a U.S. military base. The perception that the Chinese people have towards Korea and Vietnam,
when I say
5,000 years ago, it's from today.
When I say Korea, I mean the DPRK. I call the DPRK Korea. Sorry for the confusion. I say South Korea when I mean South Korea because I recognize.
But even then, that doesn't work still. Korea and China still have land disputes over that one mountain. I forget what it's called.
Mount Paektu, isn't it?
Yeah, they still have, that's a mountain. So even then, that still doesn't apply really.
So,
in any case, look, by the way, your view would be interesting and whatever, and if you were in our party, we might permit you to write it in the journal, but here's the thing, it contradicts the Marxist-Leninist view, according to which the material base serves as the foundation of the superstructure. Superstructures cannot outlive their material base for generations. They can maybe do so for a generation. They can maybe do so in the immediate period following a transition, but then completely get grinded underfoot a new superstructure produced by the mode of production. But they can't survive for generations after the consolidation of the victory of a new mode of production. That would completely contradict the Marxist outlook.
Well, then why does the monarchy exist in Great Britain, for example?
Because it's just pageantry. The monarchy isn't a real monarchy. It's just for show. It's cosmetic.
Well, I'm talking specifically about the cultural aspect.
But hold on. You can't go from treating the monarchy as the real institution of state power to a mere fact of culture.
That's not what I said.
But you need to be consistent, because if you're going to use the monarchy as an example of how, the prior mode of production can somehow survive past
it's not the mode of production, it's the culture associated
No,
with
it's
that.
not in this case the cultural system, it's the political superstructure. You're treating it now as a cultural thing because that's basically what it's been reduced to because we live in a new mode of production. But back then it wasn't a mere matter of culture, it was the actual political organ of dictatorial state power. So you see how your argument is faulty? It can't somehow transform from going from the actual institution of state dictatorship to then just becoming some facetious cosmetic cultural attribute of a given society. It's just total nonsense.
I have a question. This question isn't aggressive, so bear with me. Is this being recorded or no?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
Yes.
it is. Yeah.
It is.
Could you by chance send me the recording after so that way I can listen to it?
It'll probably be up on our YouTube, but I can send it to you. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I think this could be sped up a lot by just pointing out to the simple fact. Nicole, to the extent of your familiarity, did Marxist-Leninists have a analysis of degeneracy and decay of society under imperialism?
What do you mean by that question?
In the Soviet Union, at the same time as the post-war United States, specifically under Andrei Zhdanov, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Zhdanovshchina, as it's called, the kind of cultural dictatorship of Zhdanov, who established the guidelines of acceptable culture within the Soviet Union. There were novel cultural developments in the United States. You know, I think liberals would even regard them as progressive. But the Soviets regarded a great portion of these developments as degenerate. They said these are the examples of the decay and degeneracy of society under capitalism, the proliferation of fixation on sexuality. There were even Soviet cartoons that were lambasting the rise of fucking jazz music and shit. So basically, when you're saying something is reactionary because it's not living up to the standards of the current year, you need to understand where those standards come from a consistent Marxist-Leninist perspective. Just because cultures change in specific ways doesn't make that change progressive. Because Marxism-Leninism has a very clear understanding by historical precedent of how a great many cultural changes could actually be degenerate, could actually be examples of the decay of humanity, culture, and society, spiraling into madness, spiraling into the destruction of humanity, spiraling into barbarism. And, you know, Soviets oftentimes did regard the development of American culture, the sexual revolution, the counterculture, the rise of hippies, and all this kind of stuff as degenerate. And so did the Chinese, who were even more hardcore with respect to things like that. So although they very strongly championed the empowerment of women as they saw it, that has nothing to do with contemporary neoliberal American feminism, where the empowerment of women is really about the destruction of the masculine and the castration of males. And as a matter of fact, you would go so far as to say that the Soviet and Chinese championing of women's participation in society was about opening up conventionally masculine roles to women, right? Allowing women to be pilots and tractor drivers and engineers and doctors and scholars and people who are studying and so on and so on. But never did they even cede an inch to men becoming feminine. It was unthinkable for them for a man to wear a fucking dress, either in China or the USSR. Don't you find that curious?
So I know what you're referring to in general. When you were talking about jazz music, for instance, oh God, I have that's so much to respond to that I can't remember it all. I apologize for that. I'm not skilled at debating. I don't usually I
It's
need to
okay. You don't
debate
have to
people more.
apologize. Just make the argument the best you can.
When
Or respond to his argument the best you can.
So I remember I if I recall correctly, that some of those points were addressed by Domenico Lacerdo in his book Stalin, The History and Critique of a Black Legend. But I don't remember exactly where, and I don't know if I can pull it up efficiently. What would you recommend that I do?
Just read the whole book right now on the space.
Well, look, I think it's fair to say that the United States pursued a highly experimental, individualistic, and libertine culture in many respects after the post-war period, and the Soviets were not at all receptive to it. They were much more in favor, for example, of remaining embedded in the realist and neoclassical artistic traditions, rather than entertain the diarrhea splatter of Pollock and all this other kind of stuff that the CIA was promoting. So, so from a very basic progressivistic standpoint, the Soviets would be regarded as conservative and even reactionary in the face of progress in examples like this.
So I think that I have two things to say about that specifically. One, that I agree that there's cultural developments in these advanced capitalist countries that are propped up by the CIA that aren't always exactly good. Like, for example, prostitution, which Alexandra Kollontai wrote about. I can't remember the year. I think like 1923.
So you don't think sex work is progressive work?
I would blame the sex work system rather than the sex worker in most circumstances, but I would say that there are circumstances too where sex
But you know what the
workers are
problem, Nicole, is
essentially.
that just for having that position, you know that a lot of people would say you're a fascist, right?
Yeah, I do know that, and I've been called a fascist for that before.
Right. So this is you need to so please, if you can have empathy, please understand that this is how we feel when people call us that when it comes to our positions. Now, with respect to the problems you have with Jackson, I'm just going to be frank with you. Has Jackson made inflammatory comments to uneducated people in the past? Yeah. But before you take personal offense to it, and I think that's where the real problem comes from, ask the question of who he's talking to, who the audience is, and ask the question of what the goal is.
Lenin was very clear that Marxists should advocate for their exact positions whenever possible, and to try to change their rhetoric only when necessary. Absolutely necessary.
But there's a few problems, right? Firstly, Jackson was not. There was no American Communist Party at the time in which Jackson made these comments you have a problem with. So an individual position is meaningless. It could be a joke. It doesn't mean anything. Second of all, to have an exact position, of course, is important wherever necessary. But in the age of social media and being a media personality, sometimes when you convey your position in the same way that you would, for example, within a party journal, you're actually communicating the opposite of what you intend to the audiences who are actually receiving it. For example, how I speak to my comrades internally, I can't talk that way to the masses because they don't even know the terminology. They wouldn't even understand what I'm saying. So for me to even communicate to them and have a conversation with them, I have to take inventory and take into account where their consciousness is. Now, Jackson was on a show called Fresh and Fit. And he made these supposedly very offensive and very, very bad comments. But don't you understand that had Jackson just made a do you know how much intelligence it takes to maneuver this in a way that's not going to lead to a completely negative backlash and disaster? Because here's the thing you need to understand, Nicole, is that we need to win support. And I'm not necessarily saying that as a party we would make those same comments now anywhere. I went on Fresh and Fit, and I think because thanks to Jackson's example, we could have time to think about it. He didn't have time, right? He just was on the spot, called on the spot. But these leftists that also call you a fascist, they want to kill us. They want to straight up kill us. So we have to reach these apathetic, non-political, brain rotted audiences, and we have to somehow reach them and get our message across to them. And if we just talk like nerds and sound cringe or whatever to them, what then? We don't reach them. They dismiss us. And then what happens? How are we able to actually get the truth across when all of these self-proclaimed leftists are smearing us and attacking us at the same time? So I'm telling you, our situation in the past, it's not our problem anymore as a party, because we have a party now. We know how to handle these kind of things. We can plan for them very methodically. We know how to communicate in an organized way. We didn't have that before. There was no organization of communication before. But, I don't think it's fair to hold these things against Jackson, hold him over his head, in consideration of the fact that his goal is to communicate to people, not necessarily to look good in the eyes of, from the perspective of theory. It's to be good in practice, not just theory.
So I have a question then, because I also believe that theory should be more accessible. Like, I honestly think that there should be translations of some of the more hardcore Hegel stuff for people to understand it now, because it's really hard for the average person to just read Hegel. But Jackson's, and I know this was before the formation of this ACP, but Jackson's Maga Communist manifesto was also worded in that sort of armchair way.
The manifesto was written by me. What manifesto?
I'm sorry, I thought it was written by Jack. Maybe it was just because when I looked it up initially, it said Jackson on it.
Well, I don't know. He didn't write a manifesto. He shared a photo of many policy points. Is that what you're referring to?
If you DM me, I can send you what I'm looking at.
Is it just a list of policy ideas, or is it actually a bunch of paragraphs?
It's a bunch of paragraphs. It's a relatively long article.
Yeah, The Rise of Maga Communism. That's my article.
Yeah, but that isn't written in the same.
You're right. And that's why Jackson and I work together so well, because I have the freedom to communicate theoretically in this really dense way that only 300 Spartans understand. And Jackson has the ability to talk to millions. And the only reason I have the freedom that I have to be theoretical is because of the work that Jackson does. Otherwise,
it's the same with me and Carlos.
Otherwise, I'd be a fucking nobody, straight up.
Yo.
So then my other point is the relationship between specific rhetoric versus terminology. I think a good example here, I don't remember her name, but I'm sure you guys are familiar with Breakthrough News. Yes. Well, a Breakthrough news reporter got on Fox News at some point or another to talk about Venezuela, and she was being interviewed by Tucker Carlson. And even though Tucker Carlson wanted at first to believe that the position that of the U.S. State Department to Venezuela is an issue with the Democrats, the news reporter
they managed to make
bipartisan.
a breakthrough. Listen, I understand there's cases of this, and they're isolated cases, and they're usually exceptional. But before even ACP is formed, Jackson and I have mastered the art alongside RTSG. I'll give them credit as well. And now Midwestern Marx obviously is really good at it. and all of ACP, we've mastered the art of communication. We know how to talk to anyone and communicate our position and communicate it to non-communists and even self-proclaimed anti-communists. And that is literally what we train for, and that is literally what we've become experts at. And breakthrough news can make some breakthroughs sometimes, and other people can have breakthroughs sometimes, but we have actually dedicated ourselves fully to mastering it as a science. You know, and it pisses off leftists because they don't.
The point of teaching classes on it.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I don't want to call them leftists because why are they leftists? They're right wingers. But the fascist collaborators, as I like to call them, who don't understand the concrete anti-fascism we're engaged in, will object to our rhetoric sometimes, and they'll object to our terminology. They'll object to the fact that we're not going up to a random uneducated person and not telling them we want to abolish private property, as if that is, I mean, what does that communicate to a random person? That communicates that you want to abolish their right to have their own things. That's absurd. By the way, the person you're talking about is Anya Parimpul, actually, right? Anya is actually on our side. Anya is just like us. I mean, I'm not going to attribute to her all the politics we have, but she's on the same page as far as we're concerned about. Yeah, okay, that's who it was. Someone in my chat is telling me that's who it was. It was the gray zone people. Yeah, I mean, they understand the same thing we do, though. And they get called red-brown fascists for the same reason.
Yeah, I don't think Anya works for Breakthrough News because
I
think she's gray
maybe
zone.
I was confusing them. I'm sorry.
But she gets called a fascist as well. You know, she gets canceled the same way we are. So
the whole gray zone does. Yeah.
My point was where what I regard as the correct position, where some people, some communists, when communicating with the masses, will say that there need to be serious and I can't think of the word. I'm sorry. Serious and relentless criticisms of both the Republicans and the Democrats when talking with Maduro. Hinkle will, in my opinion, kind of dishonestly try to get Maduro to say that the Republicans will be better when
how is that?
No, he didn't say that to Maduro.
Yeah,
he very clearly
it was how the question was framed. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I'm a major in journalism, and we're not supposed to ask questions.
He was trying to talk about how there's Americans, he wasn't referring to Republicans in particular, who want peace, and if there's a possibility, and that, you know, because most Americans think that Maduro is this, you know, evil guy who just hates America for no reason. And you need to understand Jackson's brilliance. I mean, he's gotten as far as he has for a reason, and people underestimate him because he's not acting like a nerd everywhere he goes, but he knows what he's saying. He knows the implication. He knows what he's doing. And in this case, he very brilliantly was communicating not even just primarily to Maduro, but to America and to the world, right? That Maduro doesn't hate ordinary, regular, average Joes. He doesn't hate Americans. He doesn't hate the people. He hates the same government that a great deal of many Americans are beginning to hate. And that is a very good alliance. That is a very good thing to establish, a commonality between the opposition to the U.S. empire that exists abroad and the same feelings that are organically and inadvertently being cultivated domestically. I mean, that is exactly what anti-imperialist forces around the world want. They don't want to make alliances with people who, in America, who declare themselves to be enemies of society and enemies of the population, who just burn the flag and say, fuck America. They don't need those people. Those people have completely ostracized themselves from making any kind of impact whatsoever on, anything that could possibly affect the American state. But to get traction and support and a a basis of support among the masses, that is something invaluable to the cause of anti-imperialism. And all Marxist-Leninists in history took this as a truism. It's not simply that they agreed with it. It was a truism.
Yes. Let's wrap up this conversation so we can move on to someone else. I see we got like a furry or something, so I'm excited for that. But thank you for coming on, Nicole.
Can I ask one last question? I'm sorry, this isn't a hostile question, and I appreciate that both of you took so much time with me. I know that you're both busy people, and I genuinely appreciate it. But I do have one last question.
Go for it.
In your opinion, then, and this is a question, not as much as me debating, what's the differences, would you say, between Michael Parenti's strategy with engaging with people tactically and Hinkle's, where Parenti was not as focused on the more Republican voters, I guess?
I would say very simply, and I'll let Eddie go after this, but I just want to say it before I forget it. Parenti was a very brilliant popularizer of anti-imperialist ideas. Unfortunately, he did not exist in the age of social media, and I think that's the decisive thing here, difference in question. It's not about Republicans, essentially. It's about how the environment of social media has made it impossible to appear as authentic, at least, while coming from the liberal or Democrat or hegemony position. So these politically incorrect and quote-unquote conservative coded cultural positions are a direct product of the decentralized nature of social media that has led to an environment where people actually say what they think. They don't just say what they're supposed to think according to institutions. They genuinely just speak how they feel, right? And Michael Parenti probably wasn't strongly emphasizing culture war stuff because he wasn't operating in an environment in which the authenticity of personality actually mattered. He was an academic who was giving lectures. He was popularizing ideas. He was giving speeches. But as far as Michael Parenti, the face, no one cared. He wasn't an influencer. Now Jackson is operating in a completely different media environment in which all the things I just mentioned, personality, having a face, having a sense of authenticity, this matters. Being honest matters. People can tell when you're bullshitting, when you sound like Hassan Piker, or you sound like, a Twitch politically correct streamer or something. People see this as completely fake and phony.
Yeah, Michael Parenti, I would echo what Haas said and then say not only did he exist before social media, but he existed before wokeism became the ideology of the ruling class. So when he's writing in the 90s, most of the ruling class were like these, old white conservative or neoconservative men, like, the Koch brothers. Nowadays, you have Raytheon and Boeing and, these military industrial complex companies and the big banks and Wall Street plastering rainbow flags all over everything and, really co-opting various cultural movements or hot button cultural issues and weaponizing that in order to justify the worst kind of imperialism and capitalist exploitation. And this is something that actually Parenti's son, Christian Parenti, is very aware of and has written on and has even talked about how this obsession with diversity is a ruling class ideology. But that wasn't really the case in Michael Parenti's time. It was, more of they hadn't really diversified the ruling class as much. The ruling class hadn't co-opted all these culture war issues and, in which the liberal ruling class frames itself as being the left. It frames itself as being the left because it's weaponizing these cultural issues. Whereas during Parenti's time, they were more openly, just conservative, or the liberals were more openly just like Bill Clinton.
Even in his time, look at the comedians like George Carlin. All they would do is shit on political correctness all the time for how fake it was.
I would, I guess the only thing I would like to say there, and you have addressed this, but like Perenni, for example, in Black Shirts and Reds, he said that the first people Hitler massacred were gay people, and he was pronounced in a lot of his speeches about being pro-gay rights, while Hinkle, on the other hand, has said that Hitler is gay. He said that, and he's not defending that
with a lot of
either.
evidence.
Hold on, but is that wrong?
It is.
How do you know?
It's
Have you seen the evidence?
The point is refuted specifically in Black Shirts and Reds. Hinkle
The-
said
the-
specifically
yeah,
that
I
the
mean,
Nazis
look,
were.
all that would prove is that the Nazis were hypocrites, though. That wouldn't prove that they were And by the way, this was the view of Marxists. This was the view of the Soviets at the time. It was the same. So why are you attributing to Hinkle a fascist position when this was just a position of the Soviet cultural leadership at the time, and their appraisal of what fascism was, and frankly, what everyone knew, implicitly at the time. I mean, this is what it had the reputation for being. And Hitler, I mean, look at him. You don't even need the evidence. Just look at his speeches. By the way,
I have.
By the way, why? You see, this is a problem though, because this is the problem with where you're coming from. Because look at the context: the widespread lionization of Hitlerism on the basis of opposing the excesses of the LGBT ideology. And of course, these are excesses. I think that's a non-negotiable position from my perspective. It's a position that if I went to Hamtramck right now, where the Yemeni community lives, and asked them if there have been excesses with respect to the books that they have found in the libraries that their children have access to in public schools, it will be a unanimous position on their part that yes, it's excesses. But in any case, the excesses of the LGBT movement are being spinned in such a way that Hitlerism is seen as the solution. That, oh, yes, this is what Hitler was fighting. Hitler was fighting the degeneracy, yada, yada, yada. So this is the context Jackson is working with. He's on Sneeko's stream. Sneeko's audience is knee-deep in the Hitlerism jabber because it's also Nick Fuentes' audience. And this is who Jackson has to respond to. So when you think about it, what Jackson is saying is incredibly...
That was just a public tweet. It wasn't with Sneeko, but...
I wasn't sure what you were referring to. In any case, it's the same context. Look at X. Look at the environment that's on X right now. It's all Hitlerism. In any case, this is the context. So Jackson saying this doesn't increase the degree of animosity or hostility toward gay people, not even by 1%. That hostility and animosity, for better or for worse, I think for worse, by the way, I don't want hostility toward anyone, regardless of whether I agree with whatever ideology. But I want people to find peace and to be healed of whatever ailment or trouble or turmoil or whatever, persecution even by their immediate surroundings. In any case, we don't hate anyone, but that environment of animosity toward the LGBT movement in general is not... Jackson's not responsible for that. That's already very widespread. And frankly, there's nothing Jackson could do to reverse it, even 1%. Okay. On the other hand, what is Jackson actually directing animosity and hostility toward? Hitlerism. See, the objective consequence of what Jackson said damages Hitler's image. It doesn't damage the safety of gay people. It doesn't make a difference with respect to that. It damages the ideology of fascism and Hitlerism. And that's the objective result. Why do people think Jackson is attacking gay people when he's just attacking Hitler? He's attacking the very foundation of pro-Hitler ideology. He said, he's attacking Hitler because Hitler's gay. What's wrong with being gay? Well, according to the Hitlerites themselves, there's a big problem with it. So he's attacking them on the terms of their own ideology and thereby discrediting it. Why is this so overlooked by everyone? Why is the focus on it? It's insulting. It's insulting because of how out of touch people are. Because it's not just some niche 4chan basement dwellers. Go ask, I don't know how old you are, Nicole. Ask people from the generation, millennial, the Zoomer generation. They've all got little brothers. They've all got people that they have cousins. They have people that are friends in school. It is becoming so widespread, the Hitlerism. And leftists somehow think that they've created a bubble of righteousness and virtue, that they're not somehow culpable and responsible for this rising because they haven't been able to provide an alternative to it. And frankly, the takeaway from Jackson's anti-fascist war, his anti-fascist, frankly, it's an incredibly principled anti-fascist stance he's assuming. He's literally on Sneeko's stream saying this shit. And it's like he's going against what everyone in that environment believes and thinks. And he is an anti-fascist soldier, and now he's being crucified because he hurt the feelings of some out of touch. I mean, he's not the one promoting hatred toward the LGBTs. He's not the one doing that. That is something that is being done by a combination of the excesses of the LGBT movement itself and the far right response to it. And it's a feedback loop, by the way. But all Jackson has done with respect to that phenomena is discredit the ideology of Hitlerism and fascism.
So I would like to say real quick, I know that like if I kept responding and this would go on for, because you've already been talking to me for like an hour and 30 minutes. I just wanted to say that I know you want to talk to other people, so I appreciate your time. And would either of you be open to talking again in the future? I know I'm not popular or anything.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Eddie, we could have another space either Tuesday or Thursday. What sounds good for you? If any
I'm
of those
sorry,
are
but those are the 2 days that I'm least available.
okay.
I'm a college student and I work, and
So we could do them next Sunday then. Yeah.
Next Sunday
down.
will probably
I'll be
work.
around.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
I appreciate
So
that.
good, guys.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you, Nicole. Appreciate you coming on. Good conversation there. Respect people at least having the cojones to step up and have a conversation with us. But moving on, Liam, what do you got for us?
That's
You've
me.
been waiting forever.
Okay, so as a Marxist-Leninist, I feel the need to ask you this question, Haz, if you're listening.
We're here.
I don't really think you're a Marxist-Leninist, and I think you're probably here to troll, but go ahead, have a crack at it.
Okay, well, how many holes do women have below the belt?
So, by the way, Liam, I already knew you were a degenerate and a porn addict just by looking at your profile picture. I didn't even have to click your profile. I already knew it. And
Dude,
I hope you find some kind of peace, and I hope you find some kind of
it's a fucking comfort character, man.
Liam, just by the way that you're hysterically and maniacally laughing, I could already tell that you are a complete, porn addict. You're a complete, to the point you're in a state of mental psychosis, and I pray for those around you, and I could even say I pray for you as well. I think that you are a very sexually disturbed person, very clearly, and I think that I hope you don't have pets. I hope there are no animals within your vicinity that you have access to in private. And,
bro,
Bro, how are you gonna laugh? How are you gonna mock that question? You literally have like an animal as your profile picture.
Motherfucker,
and like 27 pronouns.
I don't really believe in animal rights. I have no problem like eating animals, but I don't think whatever you want to do to the pets that are potentially around you, I don't think it's fair to them. I think it's a crime against nature and God. And I hope it's brought to justice if you're guilty of what I think you are. Because I think so far I've been accurate with respect my patience, you know.
No. Run that shit back. You called me a fucking zoophile because I have fucking Rambly the Raccoon as my PFP.
No, I called you a degenerate and a porn addict and a pervert in general, which you are.
But you said you hoped I didn't have any animals in private, so you were essentially implying that I'm a fucking zoophile.
Yeah,
you probably
you
are.
probably are, to be honest.
Dude. That is just
your profile is I am a crackhead who memes every day. He/him heterosexual, demisexual, pedo/zoos. And you don't think people are gonna think you're a zoophile?
So if you have to put in your description telling other zoophiles not to interact with you, it probably speaks a lot with respect to.
Very true.
Can you kick this degenerate out? I frankly think it's
that's
becoming
enough of that.
It's
Go enjoy
unbecoming
Vouch's
as
community.
board members to even associate with this filth.
Agreed. Sorry, my computer glitched out when he came on. I think it was disgusted.
Yeah.
So it just shut down on me, which tends to happen. But let's try. You want to do another one or?
We could do one more and then that's it. Only one more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. This person's been waiting for a while. Proletarian Cool. Are you a hater?
I am not. I just have one question.
Okay.
Yeah, so adding on to what Nicole was saying earlier about Jackson, right? I like most of the work you guys do, but the thing is that how am I supposed to sell ACP or Midwestern Marx or whatever to just regular normal people when you have Jackson saying things
Because
like,
Jackson is the person that normal, regular people like. It's people like me that you have a hard time selling to normal, ordinary people.
Yeah, when I have ordinary people in my life who ask about Marxism, I always say follow this guy, and it's Jackson Hinkle, because I know he's not going to say anything that puts them off,
Look,
and I know 90% of them won't have a problem with his.
The people you're talking about are
stuff.
probably people who are already subjectively and politically and ideologically engaged. In which case, refer them to Midwestern Marx.
Exactly.
And if they're, if they're a little bit more schizophrenic, refer them to me. But in any case, Jackson is our outward facing figure for normies, and he's very good at what he does. Evidently, he's very good at it. We are the ones, or I'll just speak for myself. I'm the one that talks to freaky people, and weirdos who become normal because I inspire them to. One's in the chat right now. If you were weird before me, probably like 10%. You guys were always normal, right? In any case.
Yeah, Heather, do you want to go? Because I know Heather's been waiting for a while. She might be more of a hater. Thanks for the question, Proletarian. Go ahead, Heather. Last one. Oh, she left, of course. She's been begging to come on and bugging me for... Okay, here we go. Go ahead. Last one, Heather. You have the floor. Gotta unmute yourself. You can do it. I believe in you. You've been tweeting at me, asking me to add you for like an hour now. So let's go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead. You got yourself unmuted. Now you just got to talk. Is there something wrong on my end? I can't hear anything. Can anyone else hear Heather?
I can neither hear nor see them.
All right. Well, Thanks for messaging me 700 times to come on and then saying nothing.
All right, promote me to co-host. One last go.
Yeah. Okay, sent. I'm removing Heather. Are we doing one more? You're co-host now, Haas. Am I lagging here? This could be on my end.
Go ahead, unmute yourself and speak.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a few questions about the ACP.
Make it very quick, please.
What does the ACP think about the Party for Socialism and Liberation? I hear some ACP members somewhat support them.
I don't regard them as a Marxist-Leninist party. At best, they're a Marxite party, which is a Trotskyite splinter, and I treat them the same way as I would treat any kind of other non-communist, which is not to say that they're enemies, but I don't. For example, there are libertarians who have good views on foreign policy. And if they're willing to work with us, if anyone's willing to work with us, we will accept it, including the PSL. But we don't recognize them as Marxist-Leninists. To whatever extent they want to collaborate with us with respect to the anti-imperialist cause, we're open to it. Though I suspect that the anti-imperialist cause is not really their priority. I could be wrong, but that's what I suspect.
Agreed. And in terms of organizing strategy, I think they focus too much on student groups and protests and people who are already politically involved. Whereas we're trying to go down to the industrial and agricultural proletariat.
Something I was also wondering, will there ever be like a communist youth league in the ACP, like how some other foreign communist parties have?
The trouble we've had with that is that, first of all, we would never have a youth league of people under 18. They'd still have to be adults, and typically youth leagues are 18 to 35. Well, most of the party and leadership are very young. So that, yeah, I mean, no minors in the party ever. That's my answer. If we have a youth league, it would not be comprised of anyone below the age of 18. In my opinion, in America especially, to be a communist is to be a militant. It's to devote your life to something very dangerous. And a child is not capable of making that decision for as long as communism is not a mass movement.
Got it. Those were the only two questions I was going to ask you guys. So
sure.
Bye.
Yep. Bye. All right. I think the Heather person is not gonna.
Heather, speak.
Okay.
You did it.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, let's go. Let's go. I wanted to talk to y'all. I was waiting for like an hour, bro.
I know.
Okay. Okay. So I guess like my problem with the ACP, it's like, okay, so to give some context, I don't know. I'm just a communist, I don't have any strict like ideology or whatever, I was organized with the RCA a little bit. But because of political ideological differences and organizational differences, I decided, I don't even know if I'm still in the party because there's some confusion. They're not really organized, but they're chill people for the most part. I don't have any beef, but My issues with like the ACP is like I'm not a Trotskyist though. I've never even read Trotsky. I just thought, they were like the most popular one. I saw their like Instagram had the most followers, so I'm like, okay. And they had like that big march, so I'm like, okay, these guys seem to have like the most potential. But then I showed up at the Minnesota chapter, and they ain't it. They ain't it. But anyways, my problem with the ACP, it's like the anti-degeneracy stuff. Like, it like I don't have like I'm not a degenerate. I'm a like trust me, I get it, bro. I get it 100%. But it's like what counts as degenerate? Like, are we gonna count like trans people as degeneracy? It's like or like gay people because that's historically been shown as degeneracy.
Visible and open displays of sexuality in public of any kind. Talking, crossing boundaries with your comrades in any kind of way, offending the sensibilities of the public and trying to shock them, and
Fair enough.
we're not interested in people's private and intimate characteristics.
You should listen.
All right. All right, that sounds cool.
At the convention, I described degeneracy as just having no respect for yourself, the people around you, so your community or your environment. So it's just respect for yourself, your community, and the environment.
Right. Okay. I agree with that. I agree with that. I don't see any problem with it. Y'all, I don't know. Y'all get called fascists all the time, and I'm like, I kind of see it, but at the same time, I don't see it because, I think you're definitely like statist, right? And like in your program, I read, there was no dissolution of private property, which you said for the reason was for
No.
what's it called?
The
Optics.
program is not.
Right.
The program does reflect and uses language that reflects internal party language, and the reason we didn't mention the dissolution of private property in our program.
Optics. Yeah.
No, it's not optics. It's not optics.
Oh, really?
No.
I thought I heard that earlier.
No, let me educate people about the Marxist view of private property. So the dissolution of private property is not a direct consequence of the policy of the state. It's not something legislated or enacted voluntarily. Rather, the policies of the state are meant to manage and oversee the transition from the capitalist into the socialist mode of production, a transition which, according to its own economic logic, facilitates the eventual dissolution of private property. But the dissolution of private property does not happen by decree. Nobody sets about to abolish it. It doesn't happen that way. It happens over the course of the development of history after the consolidation of the proletarian dictatorship, which is removing the fetters that the capitalist class is artificially imposing on history and the development of the mode of production, and allowing that transition to happen. So it's not something that the state is going to enact by law. It's not something the state is going to do. If you look at this, is why in the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, they don't talk about abolishing private property. Now, does the Communist Manifesto say that communism is about the abolition of private property? Yes. But communism is a historical process. Communism is not a voluntary act of political will. It is it's the riddle of history solved. It's a historical tendency. So of course we believe that private property is going to be wither away alongside the state itself. But it's not going to do so by decree. And if you look at the policies we endorse, these are policies which facilitate the transition out of the capitalist mode of production. I mean, we directly talk about the creation of an entirely new kind of economy, which is based in information rather than money, right? So
that's interesting.
Right. So it's like it's very clearly there but we don't spell it out because it's not a policy itself.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. I guess like, cause I read the program and you know, I I came to a few conclusions about it. Like the tenet, or not the tenet, but like the the doctrine, I guess, of like uh incorporating or like incorporating and basically taking over all of the land as the government, and like enterprises and even like families signing a contract to live on the land with the government. Like I feel like it's like trying to dissolve a state by giving a state like even more power than it has today, you know?
Well, it's just the Chinese policy on land ownership.
Right, and I don't I don't agree with the Chinese policy. I don't.
Well,
I don't.
said
Why not? Because personally,
I didn't mean to interrupt, Taz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as Stalin said, dialectically speaking, the dissolution of the state is possible only insofar as the state is built up to the strongest and most powerful capacity in order that it can attend to and participate in the process of dismantling itself. A weak state could not be up to the task of participating in the process of its own dissolution, dialectically speaking. The state must be to the strongest and most powerful extent of its possible existence in order that it attends to the process by which it eventually is dissolved.
I don't understand. Why not just get rid of the state? Why not after the revolution?
Because it is precisely
dissolve all...
only a state could attend to that task, because it's such a monumental task of organization and the exercise of power and political will and keeping at bay forces that would oppose this process, that the state has to be incredibly powerful in order for that process to begin.
I feel like if you have like such a mass movement of the proletariat, then you have all the power.
No,
you have all the power, and you can organize in however which
the
way
real power.
you can.
The real power doesn't come from movements. It doesn't come from demonstrations. It doesn't come from declarations of loyalty and devotion by the masses. The real power comes from habit, from the everyday habits of the masses that are largely unconscious, that are largely apolitical, that are going about routines day in, day in, out, day in, day out. And that is where the power comes from. And for that to change something very different than to change a given policy.
You know, and I think those habits start with rejecting authority in all instances, you know, because
look,
there's no authority.
There's
no authority.
Yeah, I mean, okay, and then you reject authority in all instances, and why don't you scale it down? Why don't you try that in a community of 15 people and see what happens?
Right. I think, you know, it could. It depends on the people. It depends on the level of consciousness and education.
No, it
for
doesn't.
Sure. But
No, it doesn't.
I think it definitely does, because
doesn't. If I'm drunk and I'm incapacitated, I have to depend upon the authority of sober people, regardless of the state of my consciousness, to protect me if I'm unconscious. If we have a society in which people are interdependent, and we have a society in which some people are more knowledgeable and more wise and more experienced, regardless of the state of consciousness. It's for this reason that parents have authority over their children.
Right. Well, honestly, I believe, you know, it stems, you know, from somebody protecting you while you're drunk, stems from something other than them having authority over you. It stems from
if you're drunk, you're almost blackout drunk, and you do not obey the authority of a sober friend, you will end up on the side of the road, potentially dead. having been run over by a car because your drunk self wants to go play in traffic. So I completely disagree with that.
I don't know. I think listening to a friend's sober words is different than you submitting to their authority.
Nope,
I
it's
feel like
a
that.
matter of
They
submitting to their authority.
objectively have the authority whether you want them to or not, because you're drunk and you can't defend themselves. So, objectively, whether you want them to have that authority or not, they have it, or unless you just want to go die.
In any case, we have to wrap this up.
Yep. Thanks for coming on.
All right, I'm a definitely try to talk to y'all again.
All right,
good. We'll be here.
Eddie, we could actually do this a few times this week. We could do it next Sunday. Let me know what works for you. I'm down to just like let's say Thursday and Sunday.
I'm
what do you
down
think?
for either day works for me.
Or both.
Actually, sorry. Sunday I'll be at that concert, but
all right, let's do Thursday, and let's prepare it in advance so everyone knows it's coming in advance. And we'll do it on Thursday.
Perfect. This was great.
Okay, good.
All right.
Anyway,
thanks everyone.
See you later. Bye-bye.
We'll see you on the next one.